Beneath the damp, cooling surface of the spring meadow, sealed away from the vast and stirring night, lies a sanctuary of absolute velvet blackness. In this hidden chamber, roughly the size of a cupped pair of hands, time has no measure. There are no stars here, no whispering winds, only the profound, muffled silence of the earth. Within this subterranean cradle, the air is thick, sweet, and warm, held at a steady, life-sustaining temperature by the surrounding soil. The nursery is a masterwork of natural architecture, deeply insulated with a dense mattress of bleached, dry meadow grass and lined with a rich, downy underfur molted from the mother's own belly. Resting blindly upon this cushion of soft fibers is a creature no larger than a human thumb, a newborn black-footed ferret kit. Its skin is a translucent, pale pink, remarkably naked except for a faint dusting of translucent, downy fuzz that hints at the masked predator it will one day become. Eyes still fused shut by delicate membranes and ear canals sealed tight against the world, the kit perceives existence purely through touch, scent, and warmth. There is no loneliness in the dark. The tiny body is curled tightly into a delicate comma, pressed securely against the living warmth of 3 littermates. Together, they form a breathing, shifting constellation of infant life. When the soft scratching of shifting fur disturbs the straw, a gentle wave of motion passes through the pile. A faint, rhythmic chorus of sighs and microscopic exhales fills the chamber, accompanied by the dry, soothing rustle of the nesting straw adjusting to the tiny, restless movements of sleep. Here, in the quiet safety of the deep earth, the world fades into a singular, enduring pulse of rest. To look closer at the infant is to witness nature at its most exquisitely vulnerable. Weighing no more than a few grams, the kit's minuscule frame is a marvel of biological restraint. Its skeletal structure is largely cartilaginous, soft and flexible enough to navigate the tightest subterranean turns, yet destined to ossify into the hardened, lithe frame of an apex predator. Because its internal thermoregulatory system is not yet formed, the kit possesses no shivering mechanism to create its own heat. It is entirely ectothermic in practice, relying completely on the collective warmth of the nest and the maternal hearth above. Without this shared microclimate, the tiny body would rapidly cool, its fragile metabolic fires flickering out. Instead, energy is conserved through a specialized torpor-like sleep. The heart beats with a rapid, fluttering rhythm, pumping nutrient-rich blood straight to the vital organs and the rapidly expanding brain. Millions of neurological connections fire away in the dark, laying the complex neural architecture required for coordination, hunting instincts, and spatial awareness long before the eyes ever open to the light. Every physical attribute serves this singular phase of growth. The snout is short and blunt, optimized solely for latching. The tiny limbs are stubby and uncoordinated, ending in microscopic claws that grip nothing more than soft down and skin. For now, this delicate anatomy remains entirely suspended in a world of pure sensation, cradled in the quiet womb of the earth, while the foundational blueprint of life quietly unfolds in the deep, undisturbed shadows. Deep within the earthen alcove, survival is a communal endeavor. The kits lie fused together in a living tapestry, a tangled knot of microscopic bodies that blurs the boundary where one fragile life ends and another begins. This huddling behavior is a vital evolutionary strategy. By pressing their sides against one another, the litter minimizes total exposed surface area, drastically reducing radiant heat loss in the damp subterranean chill. Within this furry huddle, the physics of thermodynamics work in their favor. The shared microclimate stabilizes, creating a pocket of warmth far exceeding the ambient temperature of the surrounding soil. If a single kit were to drift to the perimeter of the nest, its temperature would plummet within minutes. But pulled continually toward the center by gentle, uncoordinated twitches. The collective mass acts as a single, thermal organism. Energy conservation is absolute. By sleeping in synchronized deep rest cycles, the kits lower their baseline metabolic demands. Little heat is wasted on movement. Instead, every ingested calorie of rich, high-fat maternal milk is funneled directly into cellular replication and structural expansion. The faint, rhythmic breathing of half a dozen tiny chests rises and falls in near-perfect unison, accompanied by the gentle, dry rustle of shifting straw against fur. In this subterranean cradle, the silence is profound, muffled by thick walls of packed earth and insulated by the deep slumber of the mother resting just above. Here, suspended in darkness and warmth, the delicate machinery of life hums steadily onward, fueled by the quiet power of togetherness. When the mother returns to the subterranean alcove, the dormant nursery stirs with instinctive urgency. Guided entirely by scent and tactile warmth, the blind kits pivot toward her lower belly, their tiny jaws finding their mark with remarkable precision. This is a moment of profound physiological transition, shifting the infant body from mere stasis into hyper-efficient growth. Mustard milk is remarkably potent, possessing a fat and protein content that far exceeds that of many other mammals. As the kits nurse, rich nutrients flood their digestive tracts, delivering a concentrated surge of energy specifically engineered for high-demand neonatal development. Because mustelids are destined to become long, slender predators, this early nutritional investment prioritizes the rapid elongation of the skeletal frame and the complex myelination of the nervous system. Inside the microscopic brain and across every dividing cell, this lipid-dense fuel translates directly into biological momentum. Long-chain fatty acids nourish the developing neural pathways, while high-grade proteins scaffold the forming cartilage and bone of a lengthening spine. There is no surplus activity here. Every single drop of milk is metabolized internally, converted straight into physical structure. Satisfied and heavy-bellied, the kits drift away from the warmth of the teat, their breathing slowing once more into deep, restorative rhythms. As they settle back into the tangled knot of fur and dry straw, the metabolic furnace burns steadily in the dark, quietly building the anatomy of a hunter beneath the peaceful earth. With digestion well underway, a profound stillness settles back over the nursery alcove. The heavy-bellied kits slip effortlessly into a state of deep, restorative torpor, a specialized physiological shutdown that resembles a very mild hibernation. In this quiescent sleep, their tiny metabolic rates drop significantly, and the urgent demands of the outside world fade away entirely. Heart rates slow to a gentle, measured pulse, while internal body temperatures are carefully maintained by the surrounding thermal buffer of nest insulation and maternal fur. By lowering their energy expenditure in this way, the infants ensure that nearly every single calorie derived from the rich milk is funneled directly into internal growth rather than heat production. In total darkness, neurogenesis accelerates unchecked. The brain processes the day's chemical influx, laying down the intricate neural architecture that will one day govern complex hunting strategies, spatial awareness, and acute nocturnal vision. Yet, for now, there are no sights to process, only the rhythmic rise and fall of neighboring chests and the faint, comforting vibration of the earth far above. The dry straw rustles almost imperceptibly as a limb twitches in an unconscious reflex, a fleeting sign of rapid eye movement sleep. Otherwise, absolute peace reigns within the subterranean chamber. Every breath is steady, every heartbeat a quiet promise of future agility. Suspended in this timeless pause between nursing cycles, the young kit rests completely, trusting the dark to protect its fragile, unfolding life as it dreams of the wide, open world waiting above. Deep in the heart of the earthen walls, the passage of time loses its sharp edges, marked only by the slow, imperceptible shift of temperature in the soil above. Hours drift by like the falling of dust motes in a forgotten room, unhurried and weightless. Far beyond the ceiling of packed dirt and interlocking roots, the nocturnal world begins its quiet retreat, yielding by degrees to the very first, cool breath of a spring dawn. Down in the nursery, however, the diurnal cycle is nothing more than a theoretical concept. The absolute velvet blackness remains unbroken, holding the chamber in a timeless embrace where day and night are entirely indistinguishable. Yet, the sleeping colony responds in subtle ways to the changing physics of the earth. The thermal gradient shifts by a fraction of a degree, drawing a deeper, more restorative sigh from the resting mother as she settles her weight more comfortably over her slumbering brood. The rhythmic rise and fall of miniature chests continues undisturbed. In this prolonged quiet, the delicate balance of hormones, cortisol, and growth factors circulating in the blood maintains its steady, restorative course. The quiet passage of hours is measured solely by the rhythmic cadence of breathing, a chorus of faint, overlapping sighs that drift through the dry straw. There is no rush, no sudden awakening, only the slow, beautiful accumulation of sleep doing its silent, necessary work. The tiny bodies grow ever so slightly heavier, denser, and stronger with every passing minute, cradled securely in the deep, muffled peace of the subterranean world. High above the quiet meadows, the night yields slowly to the approach of dawn. A gentle wind sweeps across the frosted grasses, carrying the crisp, invisible edge of early spring. With this shift in the upper atmosphere, the ambient temperature begins its final, quiet descent. This pre-dawn chill presses against the earth, seeping downward through the interlocking roots of fescue and packed loam. Soil is a patient conductor of thermal energy, but as the surface cools, the cold front migrates by slow degrees. Inch by inch, the chill permeates the upper strata of the earth, eventually reaching the packed walls of a subterranean chamber nested deep beneath the frost line. Inside this nursery, the air is still, thick with the earthy scent of damp clay and old leaves. The subterranean silence remains undisturbed, save for the soft, rhythmic breathing of life hidden away from the stars. While the surface world registers the sharpest bite of the night's remaining hours, the nursery offers a buffered refuge. Yet, even here, the ambient temperature dips. The earthen ceiling radiates a subtle coolness, reminding the environment that winter's grip, though loosening, still lingers in the shadows. It is a delicate transition. The world pauses between the dark of night and the promise of sunrise, held in a delicate thermal balance. Within the darkness of the maternal burrow, the stage is set for the earliest physiological adjustments of dawn, where tiny lives respond instinctively to the invisible currents of the cooling earth. Deep within the subterranean chamber, as the earthen walls absorb the descending chill, the newborn Ferret kit relies on a remarkable internal architecture to endure the temperature drop. At this fragile stage of development, the infant's body lacks the fully functioning brown adipose tissue and shivering responses required for advanced thermoregulation. Instead, survival depends entirely upon metabolic conservation. During periods of rest, the kit's physiological systems shift into a deeply economical state. The tiny heart reduces its beats per minute, stabilizing into a slow, measured rhythm that drastically curtails energy expenditure. Without a developed mechanism to generate heat independently, the infant's unvarying metabolic rate operates with quiet efficiency, prioritizing core organ function above all else. Every breath is shallow and deliberate, drawing minimal oxygen while conserving precious internal calories within the small frame. This biological economy is mirrored across the entire litter. In the absolute darkness of the nest, the kits are joined in a living tapestry of shared warmth. By pressing close to one another, they minimize their combined surface area to volume ratio, significantly reducing heat loss to the surrounding air. This huddled mass creates a microclimate of stable warmth, buffering each tiny body against the cool drafts seeping through the soil. Guided entirely by instinct, the infant adjusts its position within the huddle. The nervous system, still in its infancy, registers the subtle thermal gradient and prompts microscopic muscular shifts. Without waking, the kit nestles deeper into the communal fold, seeking the epicenter of collective heat. Through these invisible physiological adjustments, the young mustelid navigates the pre-dawn hours, resting securely in the quiet balance of biology and instinct. Within the velvety darkness of the nursery chamber, the litter settles into a deeply cohesive formation. 7 tiny ferret kits merge into a single, undulating cluster, their pink, velvet-soft bodies pressed shoulder to flank in an instinctive geometry of survival. This living constellation of infant mammals is an evolutionary masterpiece of heat conservation. By arranging themselves in a tight, spherical heap, the kits dramatically reduce their individual exposure to the cooler air circulating at the edges of the nest. Surface area matters intensely at this fragile scale. A solitary infant possesses a high surface area to volume ratio, losing precious body heat rapidly to the surrounding environment. But bound together in this cooperative huddle, the litter shares its thermal boundaries. The outer perimeter acts as a living insulation layer, shielding the innermost kits from the faint, subterranean drafts that drift down through the earthen ceiling. Heat radiated from one tiny body gently warms the next, creating a stabilized microenvironment where the ambient temperature remains consistently higher than the rest of the burrow. Even in their deepest slumber, the kits remain exquisitely attuned to this shared thermal landscape. If the collective mass shifts ever so slightly, creating a microscopic gap in the furry wall, subtle sensory receptors in their skin register the infinitesimal drop in temperature. Without a conscious thought, tiny limbs twitch and soft snouts burrow deeper into the center of the mass. They roll and press tighter together, restoring the seamless perimeter. In this quiet, subterranean sanctuary, the shared warmth of the huddle cradles each resting infant, wrapping them in a steady, protective blanket of biology and brotherhood as the pre-dawn hours slowly pass. Yet even the most cooperative huddle requires an anchor against the chilling earthen floor. Circling the outer perimeter of the nest, the mother ferret provides the ultimate thermal shield. Her slender, muscular body, warmed by a higher adult metabolic rate, arcs gracefully around her sleeping offspring. She curls her nose to her tail, forming a living perimeter that seals off the nursery chamber from the cold, damp walls of the burrow. This maternal embrace does far more than simply block the draft. By wrapping her frame tightly around the litter, she transfers her own deep tissue body heat directly to the outer layer of kits. Her soft, dense underfur acts as an exceptional thermal insulator, trapping a pocket of warm air right where the burrow's chill attempts to press inward. She is a living blanket, an anatomical masterpiece designed to compensate for the underdeveloped thermoregulation of her young. As she settles into the curve of the nest, her breathing slows to a deep, rhythmic cadence. Each gentle rise and fall of her flank gently rocks the huddle, reinforcing the secure geometry of the mass. If a stray draft whispers down the earthen shaft, her fur absorbs the drop in temperature long before it can reach the sensitive skin of the infants. Protected within this fortified ring of maternal devotion, the kits rest in absolute security. The ambient quiet of the underground world deepens around them, holding the sleeping family in a timeless, peaceful suspension while the dark hours slowly fade. Deep within the absolute safety of the maternal ring, the newborn kits drift into the deepest phase of their slumber. Though their eyes remain tightly sealed and their ears are still closed to the subterranean world, Their tiny nervous systems are remarkably active. Across their fragile, translucent skin, sudden involuntary twitches ripple through undeveloped muscles. A tiny paw flexes, tiny claws extend and retract in slow motion, and a soft, rhythmic shudder passes down a miniature spine. These random motor impulses are not restlessness, but rather the vital language of neurological development. As the brain processes the building blocks of neural pathways during deep rest, motor neurons fire spontaneously, sending gentle waves of motion across the sleeping litter. Internal clocks and developing physiology govern these subtle tremors, ensuring that blood flow reaches every extremity, even while metabolic rates remain steady and conserved. The nervous system calibrates itself in the dark, laying down the intricate wiring that will one day allow these infants to hunt across the spring landscape. Surrounded by the steady, ambient hum of the earth and sheltered from the creeping pre-dawn chill by the living wall of their mother, the kits rest peacefully. Each involuntary twitch and deep, steady breath marks the quiet, tireless progress of growth beneath the spring soil, unfolding smoothly within the timeless silence of the underground nursery. Above the quiet nursery chamber, the earth undergoes a subtle transition. High in the upper soil strata, the first imperceptible gradients of morning begin to shift the thermal profile of the ground, while the absolute chill of the pre-dawn hours still lingers against the roots of the wild grasses overhead. The air pressure within the subterranean system stabilizes, growing heavy and still. Down in the warmth of the nest, this atmospheric pivot registers as an exquisite softness in the dark. The ambient temperature ceases its slow descent, holding steady in a protective thermal plateau cradled by the surrounding loam. Within this sheltered pocket, the physiological tempo of the litter adjusts in harmony with the settling world. The rapid, spontaneous firing of motor neurons begins to subside, giving way to a profound, synchronized calm across the sleeping heap of infants. Respiration rates deepen and synchronize, drawing in the rich, humid oxygen trapped within the nesting chamber. The tiny heartbeats, previously darting with the high metabolic frequency typical of infant mammals, settle into a rhythmic, steady cadence. This physiological stabilization marks a critical threshold in daily development. The quiet transition from active restorative sleep to a state of quiet, balanced maintenance. Encircled completely by the living warmth of the maternal body, the kits rest in absolute security. Their unformed sensory apparatus rests in readiness, poised on the precipice of a vast, unseen world above them. For now, the universe remains confined to the velvet texture of fur, the steady thrum of breathing life, and the gentle, enduring patience of the subterranean dawn. Far above the secluded underground sanctuary, the first pale promise of spring dawn begins to touch the quiet landscape. Softly, the earliest hints of morning light filter down through the dense layers of packed earth and root systems, casting a gentle, diffused gray illumination into the nursery chamber. Here, shielded from the waking world, time slows to a tranquil pace. Within this subterranean alcove, a tiny nursing ferret infant rests in a profound, energy-conserving slumber, curled tightly alongside its littermates in a soft nest of dry straw. The kit forms an inseparable part of a warm, breathing sphere of life. Its body rises and falls with a slow, steady rhythm, accompanied by the faint, harmonious sound of collective respiration filling the quiet chamber. At this fragile stage of life, metabolic regulation is paramount. The infant's body temperature is carefully maintained through this huddling behavior, preserving precious calories for internal growth. While the outside world remains silent and still, the subterranean environment hums with the subtle, comforting sounds of settling soil and the distant, muffled cadence of early morning birdsong filtering down from the surface. Wrapped in the deep peace of resting phases, The young mustelid experiences a stillness that belies the remarkable biological transformations occurring beneath its tightly sealed eyelids. The nursery is bathed in a soothing twilight, holding the infant in a safe, velvet cocoon as it gathers strength for the adventures waiting in the world above. Beneath this tranquil surface, the kit's physical architecture remains profoundly unready for the unfiltered intensity of the outside world. Both the eyelids and the auditory canals are firmly sealed with a delicate layer of epithelial tissue, leaving the newborn blind and deaf to its surroundings. In the altricial world of mustelids, this state of complete sensory deprivation is not a shortcoming, but a brilliant evolutionary safeguard. By keeping these intricate sensory organs tightly locked away, nature shields them from abrasive subterranean dust, stray straw fragments, and premature neural stimulation that the infant's brain is not yet equipped to interpret. Instead of processing incoming sights and sounds, the young ferret channels every available calorie toward rapid internal construction. The metabolic energy saved by remaining closed to the external environment is instead redirected inward, fueling the breathtaking pace of myelination and synaptogenesis. The brain builds its vast, intricate highway of neurons in the dark, laying down the groundwork for future vision and hearing without distraction. Within this velvet cocoon of protective insulation, the delicate structures of the inner ear and the complex pathways of the visual cortex mature in absolute peace. The sealed portals act as a biological incubator, ensuring that when the time finally arrives for the eyes and ears to open, the sensory apparatus will be fully formed and exquisitely calibrated. Until that day dawns, the closed doors of perception offer a sanctuary of profound quiet, holding the tiny mustelid in a state of sheltered perfection, while the deeper foundations of life quietly settle into place. To the casual observer, the sleeping kit is a picture of absolute stillness. Yet beneath the soft, pale fur and the gentle rise and fall of the tiny chest, a microscopic universe pulses with astonishing velocity. While the infant drifts through the deepest tier of slumber, the brain undergoes a masterclass in biological architecture. This nocturnal quietude is deceptive. Behind closed eyelids, the central nervous system burns through glucose at a prodigious rate, driving an intense surge of internal rewiring. During these profound restorative sleep phases, the infant's brain replicates the electrical firing patterns that will one day guide its movement through the tall grasses above. Synaptogenesis, the rapid creation of new neural connections, peaks while the animal rests. Billions of microscopic bridges are forged between neurons, mapping out the foundational pathways for future spatial awareness, muscular coordination, and instinctive predatory responses. The sleeping mind rehearses the hunt long before the paws have ever touched the open earth. Chemical messengers course through the developing pathways, reinforcing the circuits that will soon interpret motion, scent, and sound. Every twitch of a sleeping toe or ripple of fur corresponds to a microscopic burst of electrical activity, carving deep, efficient channels within the somatosensory cortex. Nature ensures that this heavy cognitive labor occurs safely, shielded from distraction. Without the burden of processing incoming light or ambient noise, the neural networks dedicate their entire operational capacity to internal calibration. The slumbering kit is actively constructing the very machinery of its own survival, weaving a complex web of thought and reflex that will effortlessly govern its life in the wild, all while cradled safely in the peaceful rhythms of the deep earth. Subtle, involuntary movements begin to ripple across the sleeping infant's slender frame. Down in the quiet earth, a tiny paw flexes instinctively, the miniature claws extending and retracting in a slow, rhythmic cadence. Moments later, a cluster of fine white whiskers trembles against the nesting straw, reacting to internal pulses of energy traveling from the brainstem down to the delicate muzzle. These visible indicators of active sleep demonstrate the complex, bustling world hidden beneath the kit's serene exterior. During this phase of rest, the motor cortex fires discrete volleys of microsignals, testing the newly formed pathways that connect the brain to the skeletal muscles. Each gentle twitch of a hind leg or subtle ripple of a tail tip acts as a diagnostic test for the nervous system, measuring tone and readiness without requiring waking consciousness. The sleeping kit's body acts as a sensitive receiver, translating these deep neurological workouts into physical motion. Because the pathways governing voluntary movement are not yet fully myelinated, the fatty sheath that speeds up nerve signals, these electrical impulses spill over into surrounding muscle fibers, creating the characteristic twitches of infant slumber. It is an efficient, natural mechanism that keeps developing tissues engaged and oxygenated while the animal remains safely conserved in deep rest. Every tiny shudder and flutter represents a vital step in biological calibration. The nervous system fine-tunes its internal map, ensuring that when the time finally arrives to explore the wider world, every muscle will respond instantly to command. Cradled by the quiet dampness of the burrow, the young mustelid rests deeply, its resting body quietly preparing for the journey ahead. High above the nursery, hidden beneath a canopy of unfolding spring foliage, the gentle impact of a passing footstep on the soil sends a faint, rhythmic wave rushing downward through the strata of earth. Though the infant's auditory canals remain tightly sealed against the outside air, the subterranean world speaks in a different language, one written in pure touch and vibration. As the seismic tremor reaches the floor of the nesting chamber, it travels directly through the tightly packed soil and into the dry straw bed. The sleeping kit's delicate skeletal frame, resting flush against the ground, acts as an exquisite biological seismograph. Specialized mechanoreceptors embedded deep within the paw pads and along the underbelly capture these infinitesimal oscillations, converting mechanical pressure into neural impulses. The sensory cortex receives this subterranean data long before any airborne sound can reach the inner ear. This vibrational sensitivity provides the young mustelid with its earliest map of the surrounding environment. Without sight or sound, the kit learns to interpret the subtle heartbeat of the earth, the reassuring thud of the mother's approach, the shifting of littermates, and the distant rumble of the awakening meadow above. Each wave of motion whispers information about the wider world, training the developing nervous system to decode tactile frequencies. Enfolded in the quiet dark of the burrow, the infant absorbs these silent messages, letting the steady pulse of the ground lull it back into a deeper, more peaceful sleep. Drawing herself around the quiet cluster of kits, the mother ferret curls her slender frame into a protective embrace, tucking her damp black nose beneath her tail. Her return brings an immediate shift in the chamber's microclimate. As she settles into the center of the nest, a wave of profound, steady body heat radiates outward, enveloping the sleeping infants in a thermal blanket of restorative warmth. This shared metabolic stability is vital for the nursing young. During deep sleep, while metabolic rates dip to conserve precious energy, the mother's continuous presence buffers against the cool morning air filtering down from the entrance tunnels. Her slow, rhythmic breathing acts as a biological metronome for the burrow, its gentle cadence syncing softly with the quiet sighs of the litter. In this undisturbed sanctuary of the spring den, absolute tranquility is restored. The faint rustle of dry straw subsides as the tiny mustelids adjust their positions, pressing closer to the reassuring rise and fall of maternal warmth. Here, in the stillness of the subterranean nursery, the tireless work of internal growth continues unseen. Every neural pathway sparked by today's tremors weaves deeper into the fabric of the developing brain, quietly strengthening connections that will soon decode a world of vibrant light and sound. Wrapped in darkness and safety, the young ferret rests at the threshold of wakefulness, cradled by the gentle, constant pulse of the earth. Far above the secure subterranean chamber, the golden light of the late spring afternoon fades across the meadow, but deep within the earth, the temperature remains steady and cool. The rich, damp topsoil muffles the sounds of the surface world, reducing the wind to a low, distant sigh. Enveloped in this heavy blanket of silence, the nursery remains a sanctuary of absolute safety, lined with dry nesting straw and the lingering warmth of the family. Suddenly, a subtle seismic tremor travels down through the packed earthen walls. The rhythmic, heavy pad of approaching paws signals the return of the mother ferret from her brief foraging excursion. For a developing carnivore, life is a delicate balance of high metabolic demands and energy conservation, and the maternal presence is the axis upon which this balance turns. Long before she breaches the threshold of the nest, her scent precedes her, a rich signature of musk, damp soil, and sun-warmed fur. This familiar chemical cue stimulates the vomeronasal system of the dependent kits, triggering an immediate, instinctual response in the darkness. Though their eyes remain tightly sealed behind delicate membranes, their sensitive vibrissae twitch in the cool air. Tiny bodies begin to shift and ripple beneath the straw. Soft, high-pitched squeaks of anticipation emerge from the huddle, a chorus of eager recognition. The infants do not need to see to know. Their nervous systems are hardwired to respond to the approaching provider. With a gentle slide through the final access tunnel, the mother enters the chamber. She pauses for a brief moment, her respiration slowing as she assesses the safety of the den. Then, she issues a series of faint, low maternal chitterings, a soothing auditory beacon that immediately quiets the restless litter, drawing them instinctively toward the center of the nest where life-sustaining warmth and nourishment await. With deliberate care, the mother settles into the soft straw, curving her elongated, supple body around the cluster of blind infants. This posture creates a secure, encompassing amphitheater of warmth. As she lowers her abdomen, a gentle rustling of dry stems accompanies the presentation of her underside, exposing the swollen rows of teats engorged with sustenance. The response is immediate and coordinated. Guided by thermal gradients and olfactory markers, the kits scramble forward with surprising agility. Their tiny paws knead the maternal fur in rhythmic, instinctive motions designed to stimulate milk letdown, an evolutionary behavior shared across the mustelid family. Mustelid milk is remarkably concentrated, containing exceptionally high percentages of lipids and proteins compared to the milk of larger mammals. This specialized, calorie-dense fluid is an absolute physiological necessity for a rapid-growth carnivore. Each drop delivers the concentrated raw materials required for structural elongation, fueling the swift mineralization of developing skeletal bones and the rapid proliferation of muscle tissue. As the infants latch firmly onto the teats, a chorus of soft, rhythmic nursing sounds fills the quiet chamber, a gentle symphony of contented swallowing and contented breathing. Inside their tiny, highly efficient stomachs, specialized enzymes rapidly break down the rich fats and complex proteins. Their metabolic rate, high and demanding, instantly diverts these rich nutrients into cellular repair and structural expansion. The mother remains entirely still, her respiration slowing into a deep, steady cadence that anchors the nursing session. In the quiet security of the earth, every single drop of milk translates directly into the future strength of the litter. As the final drops of rich milk are consumed, the nursing frenzy subsides into a profound, heavy stillness. The mother shifts her weight slightly in the nesting straw, initiating the crucial post-feeding phase of maternal care. With a soft, raspy breath, she begins to meticulously groom each kit, her warm, sandpapery tongue moving deliberately across their delicate fur. This attentive licking serves a vital physiological purpose beyond mere hygiene. In altricial mammals like the ferret, whose digestive systems are not yet fully autonomous, The tactile stimulation of the mother's tongue is an absolute biological requirement. It actively triggers the somatic reflexes needed to induce urination and defecation, effectively jump-starting their immature gastrointestinal tracts and ensuring efficient metabolic waste removal. At the same time, this rhythmic licking dramatically accelerates peripheral blood circulation, warming the infant's skin and supporting cardiovascular development. Simultaneously, this intimate physical contact reinforces the family's chemical architecture. As the mother's saliva coats each fragile body, she deposits specialized pheromones from her subcaudal and chin glands. This chemical bath saturates the infants in the unique scent profile of the litter and the dam, cementing their shared identity within the subterranean ecosystem. Olfactory imprinting occurs deep within their developing brains, ensuring lifelong recognition of kin and establishing a powerful sense of security within the dark confines of the burrow. The gentle, repetitive friction of her tongue smooths their ruffled coats, leaving the litter clean, chemically unified, and completely calm in the damp, quiet earth. With bellies heavy with nutrient-dense milk and coats smoothed by maternal care, the kits begin to shift. Instinctively, they seek one another out, rolling together into a dense, interwoven pile of soft fur and relaxed limbs. This huddling behavior is a masterpiece of evolutionary design for altricial carnivores, serving as a vital mechanism for thermal regulation in the cool, subterranean chamber. Because infant ferrets possess a high surface area to mass ratio and lack fully developed internal fat reserves, they are exceptionally vulnerable to radiant heat loss. By pressing their bodies tightly against their littermates, they dramatically reduce their individual exposed surface area. This collective mass creates a shared microclimate, buffering each fragile physiology against the ambient chill of the surrounding earth. In this snug configuration, metabolic energy is brilliantly conserved. Instead of expending precious calories to shiver and generate internal body heat, the kits can redirect nearly all of their nutritional intake inward, fueling the rapid cellular division required for skeletal elongation and muscular growth. The gentle rustling of nesting straw settles into silence as the pile merges into a single, breathing entity. Rhythmic infant breathing rises and falls in slow, synchronized waves through the damp dark. Their tiny heartbeats slow, and their core temperatures stabilize within the optimal thermal zone. Wrapped in the lingering scent of their mother and insulated by each other's warmth, the litter drifts deeper into the restorative architecture of sleep. Within this quiet subterranean sanctuary, sleep is far more than a passive pause in the day. It is an active, highly regulated physiological state essential for development. As the kits descend into deep torpor, their metabolic rates gracefully slow down. This metabolic downregulation is a critical adaptation for infant mustelids, sharply reducing energy expenditure at a time when every calorie counts toward building a complex, growing body. In the peaceful dimness, the endocrine system takes the reins. The pituitary gland responds to the quietude by releasing a steady surge of growth hormones into the bloodstream. This nocturnal chemical cascade, heavily favored by uninterrupted rest, drives rapid bone elongation, tissue remodeling, and neural development. While the world above shifts into evening, the cellular machinery within each tiny, sleeping ferret works at peak efficiency. Proteins synthesize, muscle fibers lengthen, and the intricate wiring of the nervous system solidifies, without the need to burn fuel for warmth. Thanks to the shared body heat of the huddle and the maternal curve, internal resources are dedicated entirely to structural maturation. The gentle rustling of nesting straw is replaced by the profound, steady stillness of restorative sleep. Every breath taken in unison deepens the resting state, allowing the delicate architecture of each infant to strengthen and expand. Surrounded by damp earth and muffled quiet, the developing ferrets drift further into the healing phases of slumber, quietly preparing their bodies for the vibrant world awaiting them beyond the burrow walls. Far above the underground sanctuary, the amber glow of late afternoon yields softly to the encroaching shadows of evening. Yet deep within the earth, time is measured only by the steady rhythm of healing and growth. The subterranean chamber remains an absolute haven of quietude, insulated from the shifting temperatures of the surface world by thick layers of rich, damp topsoil. Within this pocket of stillness, the resting kits continue their profound, restorative slumber, their small bodies woven together in an unbroken line of warmth. Though their eyes remain tightly sealed behind delicate membranes, invisible wheels of neurological maturation are turning at a remarkable pace. Behind closed eyelids, the visual cortex and its associated neural pathways quietly develop, organizing the intricate sensory maps they will soon rely upon to explore the world outside. Every second spent in this deep, synchronized rest allows the brain to process internal signals and stabilize new synaptic connections, bridging the gap between helpless infancy and active awareness. The muffled wind whispers harmlessly against the soil far overhead, unnoticed by the sleeping litter. Their tiny, regular breathing creates a gentle, soothing cadence that fills the damp air, blending seamlessly with the faint, comforting scent of the mother resting close beside them. There is no urgency in the burrow, only the patient, biological unfolding of life, nourished by high-fat milk, warmed by the collective nest, and cradled by the profound peace of the late afternoon. The young ferrets drift deeper into tranquility. They are completely safe in the dark, resting quietly as their bodies and minds prepare for the day their eyes will finally open to the light. Deep beneath the roots of the rolling meadow, the earthen nursery rests in a profound and timeless quiet. Here, far from the sweeping winds of the spring evening, the air is thick with the rich, comforting scent of damp soil, dried meadow grasses, and the familiar, musky warmth of the maternal body. As the sun dips toward the horizon, casting a long, amber glow across the surface world, a subtle change reaches down through the winding tunnels. The heavy gloom of the subterranean den softens, brushed by a faint, diffuse warmth that gently alters the shadows. This slow transition marks the end of another diurnal cycle for the slumbering mustelid family. Through the packed soil, the distant evening breeze sends a faint, rhythmic vibration, a low-frequency whisper of the outside world that resonates softly against the den floor. Below ground, life operates by a different clock, governed by internal biological rhythms and the steady, reassuring purr of the mother as she curves her body protectively around her developing litter. In this sheltered hollow, the juvenile kits lie intertwined in a soft, breathing blanket of fur and nesting materials. Their tiny bodies rise and fall in unison, engaged in the vital, restorative sleep necessary for their rapid growth and neurological maturation. Millions of neurons fire silently in their growing brains, quietly building the complex pathways that will soon allow them to interpret the world. For now, the ambient sounds are purely intimate, the gentle rustling of bedding, the slow inhaling of deep sleep, and the quiet thrum of maternal care holding the darkness at bay, while the golden light above slowly surrenders to the coming dusk. Within this warm tangle of resting bodies, a profound biological shift begins to unfold within the developing kit. For weeks, the juvenile's eyes have remained sealed, protected by fused membranes while the intricate machinery of sight finished its construction in the dark. Now, driven by a surge in neurological development and the genetic blueprint shared by all mustelids, the microscopic cellular bonds anchoring the eyelids together begin to dissolve. Tiny moisture droplets gather along the fine seam of the lower and upper lids, softening the protective barrier. The orbicularis oculi muscles twitch involuntarily, sending a series of micro-impulses along the optic nerve. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the delicate tissue parts, a microscopic fissure opens, and for the very first time in its young life, the juvenile experiences visual perception. The initial sensory input is entirely abstract, not yet an image, but a gentle flood of raw photons registering as a hazy, diffuse glow. Without the lens accommodation fully matured, the developing brain receives only undifferentiated light and shadow, the familiar subterranean nursery, previously known solely through the rich tapestries of scent, touch, and low-frequency soil vibrations, gains a new dimension. The kit blinks against the unfamiliar sensation, the newly exposed corneas adjusting to the air of the den. There are no sharp edges yet, only the shifting interplay of amber illumination filtering down through the winding earth. It is a quiet, monumental threshold crossed in the safety of sleep and kin, bridging the total darkness of infancy and the waking world waiting just beyond the nest. The infant brain, humming with fresh electrochemical pathways, begins the complex labor of interpretation. Without the benefit of prior visual memory, the visual cortex struggles to categorize the incoming data. Dark earth translates into soft charcoal smudges, while the faint amber luminescence seeping from the upper tunnel appears as a gentle, floating haze. Every shift in contrast is a silent revelation, processed slowly by neurons that are firing in unison for the very first time. Against this backdrop of emerging sight, the tactile world remains wonderfully present. A littermate shifts nearby, a warm, undulating mass of fur sliding past in a velvety blur of motion and shadow. The kit does not yet recognize a sibling as a distinct animal with limbs and a tail. Instead, it perceives a shifting gradient of dark against slightly lighter tones, anchored by the familiar scent of musk and milk. Subtle currents of air drift down from the burrow entrance, carrying the cooling scent of twilight. As the eyes adjust to this newfound dimness, the instinctual fear of the unknown is quieted by the steady, rhythmic vibration of the mother's low purr resonating through the packed soil. The kit blinks rhythmically, testing the boundaries of its newly unlocked senses. The blurry shapes around it offer no threat, only a soft, quiet theater of light and dark, easing the young mustelid gently into the dawn of its waking perception. The cooling air at the mouth of the tunnel brings a subtle shift in atmospheric pressure, acting as a gentle summons to the waking kit. Driven by an innate developmental urge that accompanies sensory maturation, the young mustelid begins to navigate outward. Its tiny paws press tentatively against the packed earth, each step measured and deliberate as the balance centers in the inner ear adjusts to movement. Ahead, the dim golden gradient of the burrow threshold beckons. As the juvenile creeps closer to the surface, the ambient light brightens from a soft haze into distinct, shifting patterns of shadow cast by swaying grasses above. These unfamiliar visual stimuli trigger a momentary pause. The developing nervous system weighs the flush of curiosity against the deep-seated survival instinct of the subterranean species. The eyes, unaccustomed to such intensity, signal a cautious retreat before any true exposure can occur. This delicate behavioral dance between exploration and security is governed by the amygdala and the soothing chemical feedback of the maternal bond. Whenever the brightness threatens to overwhelm the fragile visual pathways, the reassuring warmth radiating from the nest behind acts as a magnetic anchor. The kit turns its head away from the light, letting out a faint, contented chitter as it glides back into the comforting embrace of the slumbering litter. Safety is found not just in the dark, but in the familiar scents and shared heartbeats of the den, where every tentative venture outward reinforces the steady, natural rhythm of growth. With a soft, purposeful pivot, the juvenile turns completely away from the beckoning golden threshold, its newly awakened senses seeking the deep, reliable solace of the natal huddle. The journey back across the packed earth is short, a comforting return down the gentle slope where the soil vibrates with the steady, synchronized breathing of resting kin. Re-entering the soft sphere of the nest, the kit surrenders to the irresistible gravity of mammalian warmth. The dried grasses, woven meticulously by the mother into a protective canopy, cradle the little mustelid as it slides gently into the center of the pile. Here, amidst the velvety tangle of sleeping littermates, thermal regulation is effortless. The mingled scents of milk, mother, and sibling fur create an olfactory haven that signals the nervous system to finally stand down from its heightened state of alertness. As the kit wedges its small body snugly between a soft flank and the cool earth below, the rapid firing of visual neurons begins to slow. The brain's processing centers, having absorbed their first tentative lessons in light and shadow, now prioritize physical restoration. This deep, restorative sleep is the true engine of maturation. It is during these quiet hours of slumber that growth hormones surge and neurological pathways solidify what the eyes have just begun to discover. A low, rumbling vibration rolls through the den as the mother adjusts her position, wrapping her long body around her offspring like a warm blanket. The distant evening breeze whispers faintly across the sealed entrance far above, but down here in the velvet dark, all is still. Breathing slows into a peaceful, rhythmic cadence, and the entire family drifts deeper into the healing quiet of the spring night. Within the cozy security of the subterranean hollow, the kit's tiny body surrenders entirely to the restorative tide of deep sleep. This is no ordinary rest, but a profound neurological imperative essential for the growing mustelid. Deep, rapid eye movement sleep acts as a quiet laboratory for the developing brain, synthesizing the startling influx of daytime sensations. As the juvenile's muscles relax into absolute stillness, the newly formed neural pathways forged by those first glimpses of light begin to prune, strengthen, and organize themselves. Growth hormones pulse generously through the bloodstream, fueling the lengthening of bone and the thickening of soft fur. Every breath drawn in unison with the littermates reinforces a shared biological rhythm, anchoring the young ferret in a state of absolute safety. The chaotic dance of shadow and brightness witnessed just moments before now transforms into abstract memory, safely catalogued and integrated during these hours of inactivity. Outside the burrow mouth, the spring evening deepens, casting a cool cloak over the silent prairie above. Yet deep inside the earth, the temperature remains steady and benign, cushioned by soil and maternal care. The faint subterranean rustling fades away entirely, replaced by the deep, rhythmic hum of communal slumber. Wrapped in the velvet dark and cradled by the warmth of its kin, the juvenile drifts further into peaceful oblivion, resting thoroughly so that tomorrow, when the golden light returns to the threshold, the eyes can open to explore the world anew. Deep within the earthen wall, far from the cool, damp safety of the sleeping chamber, a gradual change stirs the air. A slender nose lifts, testing a current drifting down from above, a current rich with the heavy, golden scent of sun-warmed dust, crushed clover, and open sky. The young ferret shifts, its developing nervous system awakening to the subtle gradient of light shifting from absolute obsidian to a soft, welcoming amber. Instinct, refined over generations of nocturnal and crepuscular hunting, urges caution. The juvenile pauses at the threshold where the cool interior meets the threshold of the wider world. Pupils, previously dilated to capture every nuance of subterranean gloom, contract steadily against the influx of photons. This sudden exposure triggers a complex cascade within the visual cortex, interpreting shapes, edges, and the brilliant contrast of the surface for the very first time. Slowly, testing the ground with deliberate grace, the small mustelid advances. Short, muscular forepaws reach out from the tunnel mouth, pressing softly against the packed soil of the field edge. The substrate feels different here, drier, firmer, and holding the lingering heat of the afternoon sun. This thermal gradient stimulates specialized thermoreceptors in the skin, encouraging the young animal to stretch forward rather than retreat into the shadows. Every whisker trembles, mapping the microcurrents of the breeze. The ambient sounds of the summer meadow, a faint, rhythmic insect hum, and the gentle rustle of tall grass stems bowing in the distance, wash over ears that have only ever known the muffled quiet of the nursery. Hesitant yet compelled by an innate drive to explore, the juvenile stands poised at the very edge of the sunlit earth. Beyond the bare soil of the burrow's threshold lies a towering, vertical world. To the young ferret, the surrounding meadow is an impenetrable forest of timothy grass and wild oats. Stems thicker than its own tail rise skyward, forming a dense canopy that filters the afternoon sunlight into shifting ribbons of green and gold. Navigating this miniature wilderness requires a delicate calibration of musculoskeletal growth. Each short, muscular leg reaches forward, coordinating balance across uneven terrain while sensitive guard hairs brush against the rough stalks. This tactile feedback stimulates mechanoreceptors in the skin, sending a continuous stream of positional data to the developing cerebellum. The juvenile learns quickly how to shift its weight, weaving its low-slung body beneath a lattice of interlaced roots and fallen debris. Around it, the vegetation comes alive with motion. A gentle summer breeze sweeps across the agricultural field edge, causing the tall grasses to sway in a rolling, rhythmic wave. As the stalks brush softly against the ferret's whiskers and dense underfur, the tactile stimulation is profound. Every movement releases a complex bouquet of botanical scents, crushed cellulose, sweet nectar, and the rich, yeasty aroma of sun-baked loam. The olfactory bulb works overtime, cataloging each novel molecule carried on the wind. The young mustelid pauses, half submerged in a tangle of clover, letting the sensory data wash over its nervous system. With every step deeper into the swaying green sea, confidence builds within the small frame, transforming caution into quiet, steady exploration. Drifting through the swaying stems, the warm afternoon breeze carries an invisible, intricate tapestry across the meadow. For the young ferret, whose eyes and ears have only recently unlocked the secrets of the nursery, this rush of airborne chemistry represents an entirely new dimension of reality. It stops beside a patch of damp earth where the shade of a dock leaf keeps the soil cool and rich. Slowly, the pink-nosed snout lowers toward the ground. Specialized receptor cells within the nasal cavity, millions of olfactory neurons working in quiet harmony, begin to process the dense chemical signatures rising from the earth. The juvenile inhales gently, drawing in the heavy, grounding scent of decaying organic matter and fungal mycelium tangled deep beneath the root systems. Every molecule tells a detailed story of the soil biome, whispering of moisture, subterranean earthworms, and ancient, cyclical decay. Wafting from further afield, crossing the boundary where the agricultural field meets the wild grasses, come fainter, more complex trails. Faint traces of passing insects, the musky passage of a vole earlier in the day, and the sweet, sun-warmed resin of clover blossoms fold together into a rich atmospheric map. The developing brain maps these gradients, learning to distinguish near from far, safe from strange. Each breath expands the young ferret's mental horizon far beyond the narrow walls of the underground burrow. Eyes half closed in concentration, the little mustelid simply stands in the gentle breeze, letting the profound, silent symphony of the summer scents wash completely over its resting, receptive mind. A sudden, subtle shift in curiosity draws the young ferret forward, urging its short, sturdy legs into motion. Navigating the dense, undulating landscape of the field edge requires a delicate mastery of balance. Every step across uneven tufts of grass and scattered, woody roots engages the developing musculoskeletal system, firing impulses along growing neuromuscular pathways. For a young mustelid, physical coordination is an intricate dance of opposing forces. The spine, inherently flexible and engineered for fluid movement, stretches and rounds with each deliberate stride. Small paws test the yielding soil, adjusting effortlessly to hidden dips in the terrain and fallen lichen-dusted twigs. The low center of gravity, an evolutionary hallmark of burrowing carnivores, keeps the juvenile remarkably stable, even as soft clover leaves brush against its slender belly. With every passing moment, these repetitive, low-impact movements refine the animal's innate agility. Cerebellar development accelerates as the brain processes vestibular feedback from the inner ear, harmonizing vision, proprioception, and muscle tension. The clumsy, hesitant motions of early exploration gradually give way to a smoother, more rhythmic gait. Each muscle fiber contracts and relaxes in silent synchrony, laying down the biological foundations for the characteristic, undulating locomotion of its species. Navigating this micro-terrain is not merely play, it is essential physical conditioning, transforming an unsteady kit into a finely tuned, highly capable hunter of the tall grass realm. A sudden, shifting rush of wind rolls through the tall canopy of timothy and fescue, bending the amber stalks in a sweeping wave. Overhead, the golden sunlight flickers and dances, casting long, fractured shadows that race across the soil like silent, passing clouds. Instantly, every muscle in the young ferret's body locks. The instinctive freeze response, hardwired into the mustelid nervous system over millennia of evolutionary pressures, takes command in a fraction of a millisecond. The juvenile drops flat, pressing its elongated, flexible torso entirely against the sun-warmed earth. Its heart rate elevates slightly, driven by a surge of autonomic awareness as sensory receptors gather data from the vibrating air. Whiskers twitch, sweeping the microcurrents of the breeze to detect airborne shifts in pressure or scent. The inner ear registers the deep, resonant thrum of the wind against the grass stems, separating the familiar ambient hum of the meadow from anything that might signal a potential avian or terrestrial threat. Every sense is dilated, hyper-focused, and utterly still. For several quiet heartbeats, the world seems to hold its breath. Nothing approaches. The shadow drifts onward, swallowed by the wider expanse of the agricultural field. Slowly, tension drains from the juvenile's spine. The arched back relaxes, and the low-slung belly lifts just a fraction of an inch off the soil. Reassured by the returning serenity of the late afternoon, the young ferret blinks sleepily, lets out a soft, almost imperceptible sigh, and eases back into a state of calm, unhurried exploration. The late afternoon sun begins its slow descent toward the western tree line, casting long, amber rays across the sprawling agricultural border. This gentle shift in the angle of light brings a profound change in thermoregulation for the young mustelid. Exposed to the open air for hours, the juvenile's internal thermostat responds gratefully to the residual heat trapped within the topsoil. Patches of sun-baked earth radiate a steady, comforting warmth, soaking deep into the short, dense underfur and warming the developing musculoskeletal frame after a day of extensive physical exertion. Seeking the ultimate comfort, the ferret finds a lush, sheltered hollow nestled deep within a thick mat of soft clover. Here, the dense greenery acts as a thermal blanket, buffering against the cooling draft of the early evening breeze. The juvenile curls its elongated body inward, tucking the nose against the soft fur of the belly in a classic, heat-conserving posture that minimizes surface area and preserves precious core temperature. With every slow, rhythmic inhalation, the tiny chest rises and falls in quiet harmony with the surrounding meadow. The day's overwhelming influx of novel stimuli, the complex aromatic profiles of the soil, the intricate architecture of root systems, and the vibrant tapestry of textures, begins to process and consolidate within the resting neurological pathways. Neural connections strengthen quietly in the deep stillness of sleep, encoding the lessons of balance, scent, and spatial awareness for future maturation. The ambient hum of insects softens as dusk approaches, replaced by the deep, tranquil quiet of the field edge. Safe within its leafy refuge, The young ferret rests deeply, wrapped in the fading warmth of the golden summer day. High above the shadowed hedgerows, the midday sun casts a heavy, golden weight across the dry meadows. Summer reaches its absolute zenith, baking the soil and bending the tall, dust-dusted timothy grass beneath a shimmering wave of heat. Out in the open pasture, the ambient temperature climbs past the comfortable threshold of a young mustelid's high-energy metabolism. Mustelids, possessing a slender build and a rapid basal metabolic rate, are particularly vulnerable to thermal stress. Their bodies generate intense internal heat during play, yet they lack the sweat glands needed to cool down efficiently. Sensing the rising mercury, the juvenile ferret pauses its playful exploration near the edge of an old, weathered stone wall. The air above ground grows thick and still, carrying only the faint, dry rustle of a muffled summer breeze passing through the sun-bleached stalks. Distant bird calls fade away into the oppressive afternoon hush, replaced by the persistent, shimmering hum of invisible insects. The young ferret's small chest rises and falls with a slightly accelerated rhythm, signaling the immediate biological imperative for thermal regulation. Nature provides an ancient, reliable solution just inches away. Turning its back on the glaring light of the fields, the kit drops low to the ground, whiskers twitching. It navigates toward a dark, shadowed crevice nestled deep between the cool limestone foundations of the wall. Here, the stifling pressure of the surface world begins to lift, replaced by the faint, earthy scent of damp soil and ancient stone, whispering of the cool sanctuary waiting below. With a smooth, fluid motion, the juvenile slips beneath the protective architecture of the stone wall. The transition from the blazing exterior to the subterranean passage is instantaneous and profound. Earth and limestone create a natural thermal buffer, absorbing the searing ambient heat and trapping a cool, steady microclimate within the winding corridors. As the kit pads deeper into the earth, the temperature drops by several degrees. This rapid shift triggers an immediate physiological response in the young mustelid's nervous system. Vasodilation, the widening of blood vessels near the skin, reverses as the cool air greets the surface of the fur, allowing internal heat to dissipate safely into the surrounding soil, rather than trapping it within the core. The tunnels are narrow and intimately familiar, worn smooth by generations of paws. Here, the glaring, chaotic stimuli of the sunlit world fade away entirely. The bright glare dissolves into a soothing, velvet shadow, offering complete sensory rest to eyes accustomed to tracking darting insects and waving grass blades. Overhead, the muffled summer breeze can no longer be felt, reduced to nothing more than a faint, distant whisper brushing across the top of the masonry. The air deep within the passage is heavy with the rich, mineral scent of damp soil, old roots, and smooth river stones. Every inhalation brings moisture and coolness to the kit's slightly parted jaws, instantly easing the strain of the afternoon heat. Guided by sensitive white whiskers that lightly brush the cool earthen walls on either side, the young ferret moves with quiet confidence. Each step is unhurried, absorbing the tranquil stillness of the subterranean world, sinking further into an environment designed by nature for deep, restorative safety. Deep within the labyrinth of tunnels, the juvenile reaches the terminal sleeping chamber, a secluded, hemispherical hollow carved out beneath the heaviest slabs of the wall. This intimate alcove is naturally carpeted with fine, sifted earth and a gentle nest of dry, fibrous rootlets left by an ancient bramble. The soil here acts as a superb acoustic dampener, swallowing the last faint echoes of the outside world into absolute, velvet silence. Before settling, the young mustelid performs an innate, rhythmic ritual. It circles 3 times within the confined space, its flexible spine arching and bending with fluid grace. This circling behavior gently packs the loose soil and root fibers, creating a tailored depression that matches the exact contours of its growing body. Once satisfied, the kit tucks its nose deep against its lower abdomen, drawing its hind legs inward and wrapping its long, pliant tail snugly around its entire frame. This tight, coiled posture is a masterpiece of mammalian thermoregulation. By minimizing its surface area to mass ratio, the compact sphere drastically reduces thermal radiation loss, allowing the juvenile to conserve precious metabolic energy while it sleeps. The frantic demands of juvenile play give way entirely. Muscle fibers, micro tears from hours of leaping and sprinting, begin repairing themselves as growth hormone levels surge in the resting state. The kit lets out one final, nearly imperceptible sigh, settling its weight heavily into the yielding earth. The rhythmic rise and fall of its ribs slows down, matching the steady, tranquil pulse of the deep subterranean world. Within this subterranean sanctuary, the juvenile's biological engines begin a profound, restorative descent. As unconsciousness deepens, the nervous system shifts dominance from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic network, orchestrating a dramatic metabolic slowdown. The core body temperature drifts downward by a fraction of a degree, matching the cool, stable ambient temperature of the surrounding limestone and damp soil. Cellular metabolism shifts gears. Without the constant demand for explosive kinetic energy, glucose consumption plummets. In the liver and skeletal muscles, glycogen stores are carefully conserved and replenished, while circulating proteins focus entirely on tissue synthesis and neurological development. The kit's breath transforms, stretching into longer, more deliberate cycles. Inhales draw in the damp, mineral-rich scent of deep earth, while exhales release a tiny, warm mist that gently warms the pocket of air trapped within the fur. With every passing minute, the heart rate decelerates, the robust thrum of youth easing into a slow, measured cadence. Each ventricular contraction pumps just enough oxygenated blood through the tiny circulatory system to sustain baseline cellular respiration, minimizing the heart's own workload. This calculated physiological economy protects the developing mustelid against the energetic stresses of the hot summer season. This state of regulated torpor resembles a deep, healing hibernation in miniature. It is an evolutionary masterpiece of energy conservation, granting the growing body the absolute quiet it requires to rebuild. Surrounded by velvet stillness and cradled by the steady pulse of the earth, the young predator drifts further into restorative oblivion, completely untouched by the fading light above. Silence envelops the underground chamber, a profound and velvety quiet unbroken by the rustle of meadow grass or the distant cries of diurnal birds. In this absolute sensory deprivation, the chaotic stimuli of the sunlit world simply cease to exist. The heavy weight of the stone wall overhead acts as a soundproofing blanket, dampening the muffled summer breeze until it becomes nothing more than a faint, impossible memory. Within the comforting embrace of total darkness, the juvenile's brain undergoes a quiet, vital transformation known as neurological integration. While the body rests, intricate neural pathways actively process the day's exploratory adventures. Memories of scent trails, uneven terrain, and sudden movements are sorted, filed, and woven permanently into the developing architecture of the mind. Synaptic connections consolidate, strengthening the instinctive wiring that will guide the young predator when twilight finally arrives. Only the soft, rhythmic breathing disturbs the stillness. A gentle rise and fall of the small ribcage pulls in the cool, subterranean air, maintaining a peaceful tempo that matches the tranquil heartbeat of the earth itself. Every inhale brings a subtle renewal, while every exhale releases the last traces of daytime fatigue into the damp, shadowed pocket of the burrow. Faint settling of soil particles occasionally whispers against the far walls, a reminder of the slow, patient geological forces shaping the sanctuary above. Here, suspended in a timeless bubble of cool air and deep shadow, the mustelid rests in undisturbed harmony. The frantic energy of youth is quietly replaced by the steady, restorative pulse of quiet sleep, holding the world at bay as the afternoon slowly yields to the approaching evening. Hours drift away in undisturbed slumber, measured only by the imperceptible turning of the earth. Deep within the subterranean labyrinth, a subtle shift begins to stir the stagnant air. From the sun-baked meadows far above, a gentle current of cooling air trickles downward, threading through the intricate network of tunnels beneath the ancient stone wall. This descending draft carries the faint, crisp scent of evening moisture and cooling grasses, signaling the retreat of the fierce summer heat. The drop in ambient temperature acts as a natural biological cue, gently nudging the juvenile's nervous system toward the edge of wakefulness. Specialized thermoreceptors in the skin register the refreshing change, transmitting delicate signals to the hypothalamus to slowly recalibrate the body's internal thermostat. The profound metabolic slowdown begins to gently reverse, coaxing the resting cells back toward active readiness. Slowly, the tight, compact posture relaxes. The small, musk-scented bundle uncoils slightly as respiration deepens, shifting from the slow, shallow breaths of torpor to a more regular, alert rhythm. A soft twitch ripples through the hind paws, an involuntary reflex as muscles, fully repaired and rich with renewed glycogen, prepare for movement. Faint settling of soil particles whispers against the chamber walls once more, accompanied now by the muffled, low-frequency hum of twilight insects awakening above ground. The juvenile's whiskers quiver against the damp earth, picking up the subtle vibrations of the coming night. With a quiet, unhurried stretch, the young ferret opens dark, sensitive eyes into the shadows, welcoming the cool embrace of evening and the awakening of senses poised for the hunt. As the golden light of the summer sun dips below the horizon, long, purple shadows stretch lazily across the overgrown field edge. This rich agricultural border, tangled with wild grasses, sweet clover, and ancient briars, hums with the fading energy of the day. A gentle evening wind whispers through the vegetation, carrying the dry, earthy scent of sun-baked soil and the rising chorus of crickets tuning their evening instruments. High overhead, a distant bird calls out its final melodic notes before settling into the safety of the canopy. Deep within the subterranean sanctuary of the den, away from the heat and glare of the afternoon, a small, sleek shape stirs. The juvenile ferret blinks sleepily, its whiskers twitching as it catches the shifting currents of the cooling air outside. Driven by an innate curiosity, the young mustelid eases forward, navigating the familiar earthen tunnel until its nose breaches the surface. Stepping out onto the threshold of the twilight, the juvenile pauses. This cautious emergence is a vital sensory milestone. Every breeze delivers a rich tapestry of airborne cues, the musky trace of passing beetles, the distant scent of damp earth, and the faint, vibrating hum of nocturnal insects. The cooling air triggers a physiological shift within the growing predator, quickening its heartbeat and rousing its muscles from their daytime slumber. Surrounded by towering stalks of timothy grass that sway rhythmically in the breeze, the young ferret takes its first tentative steps beyond the den's protective rim. The expansive summer meadow awaits, a vast and vibrant training ground where the ancient instincts of the chase will soon awaken under the softening canopy of dusk. From the dark mouth of the burrow, more sleek shapes begin to spill forth into the cooling air. One by one, 4 littermates emerge, their flexible spines stretching as they shed the grogginess of their daytime sleep. They gather just beyond the threshold in a tumbling tangle of soft, golden brown fur and pale underbellies, their movements fluid and unhurried. A soft, bubbling sound ripples through the little group, a low, rhythmic duking that rises and falls in pitch. This gentle vocalization is an essential social bridge, easing the transition from rest to activity and signaling peaceful intent among the siblings. as they nuzzle noses and brush against one another's flanks. Chemical signals pass between them through scent glands, reinforcing family bonds that will sustain them through future hunts. This gathering is far more than simple affection. It is the natural spark of neurological arousal. The touch of fur against fur and the shared vibration of their murmuring voices send ripples of excitement through their developing nervous systems. Muscles twitch beneath sleek coats as stored energy begins to demand release. Suddenly, without warning or formal cue, one kit delivers a playful nip to a sibling's shoulder and darts away into the rustling grass. The spell of calm is instantly broken. A ripple of kinetic energy surges through the tangle of bodies, transforming the quiet den entrance into a flurry of motion. The littermates spring after the fleeing sibling, their low-slung bodies hugging the earth as they tumble together into the grass stems, ready to test their growing strength in the fading light. What looks like carefree tumbling in the tall grass is, in truth, an intense biological boot camp. Every arched back, sideways hop, and sudden vertical leap is driven by innate predatory motor patterns hardwired into the mustelid brain. When the young ferrets grapple and roll, their bodies are rehearsing the exact physical sequences required for subduing elusive prey. Neuromuscular development accelerates rapidly during these bouts. The rapid firing of motor neurons teaches the musculoskeletal system to react in milliseconds. As one kit lunges and another sidesteps with a fluid twist, their developing nervous systems map spatial boundaries and fine-tune proprioception, the internal sense of where the body is in space. This sensory integration ensures that future strikes will be calculated and instantaneous. The energetic cost of this play is high, yet the evolutionary return is higher still. Cardiovascular endurance improves with every explosive sprint, and fast-twitch muscle fibers grow denser, preparing slender limbs for the immense demands of the hunt. They practice the classic ambush posture, freezing entirely before launching a synchronized pounce upon an imaginary adversary in the turf. Through repetitive, safe skirmishes with siblings, the juvenile hurls its growing body through complex trajectories, transforming raw instinct into polished, physical mastery. Breaking away from the tumbling cluster of its littermates, the juvenile ferret dips low beneath the canopy of the overgrown field edge. The energetic chaos of group play fades behind it, replaced by a profound, focused silence. Here, amidst the tangled base of the grasses, the young mustelid transitions from social sparring to solo reconnaissance. Its elongated spine begins to undulate in a slow, sinuous wave, pressing the sleek, low-slung body flush against the dark earth. This classic low crawl is an evolutionary masterpiece of stealth. Every vertebra moves in a fluid sequence that minimizes silhouette and eliminates sudden vertical motion, perfectly designed to conceal the hunter from the sharp eyes of potential quarry. As it navigates a dense thicket of stems, sensory integration takes over. Whiskers twitch rhythmically, sweeping side to side to brush against surrounding vegetation, translating tactile cues into a detailed mental map of the hidden microhabitat. The paws place themselves with deliberate, silent precision, distributing weight evenly across soft soil. The juvenile pauses, freezing into an absolute stillness where even its breathing becomes shallow and imperceptible. This solitary practice refines the precise predatory posture required for a successful ambush. By modulating muscle tension and utilizing the cover of the dense understory, the young hunter hones its ability to stalk unseen. It is a quiet rehearsal of patience and control, grounding the restless energy of youth into the disciplined focus of a true nocturnal predator, melting seamlessly into the gathering twilight. A sudden, sharp rustle shivers through the dry leaf litter just ahead, breaking the absolute stillness. In less than a fraction of a second, sensory integration transforms into explosive physical action. There is no hesitation, only an instantaneous, coiled spring release of energy. The young ferret launches forward in a breathtaking arc, showcasing the remarkable power of specialized fast-twitch muscle fibers designed for lightning-fast accelerations. This brief, intense burst of motion requires an extraordinary level of neuromuscular coordination. As the juvenile leaps, its body stretches into a sleek ribbon of muscle and bone, clearing a tangled root system with effortless grace. Every sensory input, from the faint vibration in the soil to the subtle displacement of air, has been calculated by a rapidly maturing nervous system. Mid-air, the mustelid rotates with instinctive spatial awareness, paws outstretched to secure a precise landing upon a mossy hummock. This rapid twitch response relies heavily on high-speed neural pathways that bypass conscious thought, operating instead on pure, ancient instinct. Such high-speed ballistic movements condition the cardiovascular system, flooding oxygen-rich blood through growing muscles and reinforcing the delicate neural connections between brain and limb. As the brief chase concludes in an empty patch of clover, the intense exertion tapers off just as quickly as it began. The juvenile stands tall for a quiet moment, chest rising and falling in a steady, calming rhythm. The sudden flurry of motion dissolves back into the tranquil hush of the twilight meadow, leaving behind only the gentle sway of the evening breeze and the soft, grounding rhythm of the earth settling in for the night. As twilight surrenders to true night, the energetic bouts of play gradually subside. The cooling summer air carries a gentle evening wind that whispers softly through the rustling grass stems, rustling dry blades in a low, lulling cadence. Slowly, the littermates gather together near the mouth of the burrow, drawn by the deep, biological comfort of the pack. The frantic bursts of neurological firing and high-speed muscular contraction gently taper off, giving way to shared grooming. Warm, rhythmic licking moves across tired shoulders and dusty flanks, a soothing social behavior that lowers heart rates and releases calming endorphins throughout their developing nervous systems. The high-energy demands of the chase fade, replaced by a profound, restorative stillness. One by one, the young ferrets begin to weave their long, flexible bodies together, draping soft fur over warm fur in a tangled heap of resting mustelids. The juvenile curls its lithe spine into a tight, secure circle, pressing its chin comfortably against the cool earth of the field edge. Safe within the familiar embrace of its littermates, heavy eyelids droop against the gathering darkness. The frantic chirping of nocturnal insects fades into a distant, rhythmic hum, blending with the soft, grounding pulse of the meadow. Deep, steady breaths begin to synchronize across the sleeping pile, moving in time with the gentle sway of the tall grasses overhead. Surrendering entirely to the profound exhaustion of the chase, the young hunter drifts into a deep, restorative slumber, its body silently rebuilding muscle and reinforcing every hard-earned instinct beneath the quiet canopy of the summer stars. The golden amber of twilight slowly dissolves into the deep, indigo velvet of a summer night across the open grassland. As the intense heat of the day surrenders to the deepening dark, the atmosphere cools, releasing a sigh of gentle night breeze that ripples softly through the sea of tall bluestem. Above, a vast, star-studded canopy stretches from horizon to horizon, painting the silvery landscape with the faint, ethereal glow of distant constellations. In this quiet stillness, the earth exhales the rich, earthy aromas of sun-baked soil cooling beneath the open sky. From the shadowed safety of a shallow earthen burrow, a young ferret pushes outward into the nocturnal world. At this developing life stage, the juvenile relies less upon the fading limitations of visual perception and far more upon the remarkable power of its developing olfactory system. The transition from day to night demands a complete sensory shift. Without the blazing sun to guide its path, the young predator turns its attention to the intricate, invisible architecture of scent. The cool air carries an array of complex chemical signatures, drifting across the prairie like an unwritten map. every blade of grass and passing whisper of air holds a story. The low, rhythmic hum of summer insects vibrates through the subterranean roots, while the distant, steady chirping of crickets weaves an acoustic backdrop to the deepening evening. Stepping cautiously into the dew-kissed vegetation, the young ferret pauses, lifting its pink nose toward the starlit expanse to begin reading the night. Motionless in the silver-tipped grass, the juvenile stands like a statue carved from curiosity. Its slender body pauses entirely, allowing the gentle night breeze to wash over delicate facial features engineered by generations of evolutionary refinement. At the forefront of this design is a remarkably sensitive nose, twitching rhythmically to capture the molecular whispers of the prairie. With every inhalation, specialized nasal passages filter and warm the cooling air, while microscopic scent particles settle upon specialized receptors. But the processing does not stop within the nasal cavity alone. As the young ferret draws in a particularly rich stream of air, it engages the vomeronasal organ, often called Jacobson's organ, situated in the roof of its mouth. By slightly parting its jaws, the predator allows moisture-borne chemical signatures to reach this secondary olfactory center, bypassing standard smell to read the pure chemistry of the ecosystem. Invisible layers of life unfold across the plain through this sensory alchemy. An intricate chemical trail reveals where a plump beetle ambled moments ago among the roots. A faint, earthy trace marks the path of a tiny toad navigating the damp undergrowth, while a complex cocktail of musk and dried seeds maps the recent passage of a meadow vole. The juvenile processes these drifting vapors effortlessly, piecing together a vivid mental map of the nocturnal world that vision alone could never supply. Every scent carries direction, distance, and identity, painting a clear picture of the landscape under the starlight. The young ferret closes its mouth slightly, lets out a soft, contented sigh, and lets the invisible map guide its next slow, deliberate step through the fragrant, rustling grass. Beneath the glittering canopy of summer stars, the young ferret lowers its head into the dense thicket of the meadow. Here, the world transforms into a subterranean jungle of grass stems and wildflower roots, where movement becomes an exercise in pure tactile grace. As the slender predator glides forward, a gentle night breeze rustles the blades of dew-drenched vegetation. This rhythmic, soothing acoustic backdrop is woven together with the distant, steady hum of summer insects and the soft sway of prairie grass. Every step is cushioned by a deep carpet of loam and fallen debris, absorbing sound and rendering the ferret's passage entirely silent. The journey through this miniature forest relies heavily on touch. Long, sensitive vibrissae, the stiff whiskers framing the muzzle, sweep constantly from side to side. These specialized hairs act as exquisite physical antennas, brushing against cool foliage to detect the slightest shifts in the immediate environment. If a stem bends or a dry leaf shifts, the whiskers relay immediate spatial coordinates to the brain, allowing the juvenile to navigate absolute darkness with astonishing precision. Simultaneously, the outer guard hairs along the flanks register the damp, cool touch of the surrounding grass. Each individual hair follicle is richly supplied with nerve endings, turning the entire coat into a delicate sensory organ that maps the narrow pathways between plant roots. The contrast between the cool night air and the sheltered warmth beneath the vegetation creates a soothing, rhythmic sensation as the young ferret moves deeper into the quiet undergrowth, undisturbed by the vast open sky above. Ahead of the low-slung predator, the uniform spread of the meadow yields to a massive obstruction. A weathered, moss-covered fallen log rests upon the soil, its aged timber settled deep into the grassy loam. For a small mustelid traversing the nocturnal landscape, such architectural ruins of the forest edge provide vital geographic anchors. Mustelids instinctively seek out these natural microhabitats during their nightly travels, relying on structural cover for temporary safety from open-sky avian hunters and for effective microclimate insulation. The juvenile approaches the decaying wood, its pink nose immediately tracing the intricate contours of the damp bark. Beneath the main trunk, the earth has slowly eroded away over successive seasons, leaving a shallow, elongated hollow lined with dry, wind-blown leaf litter and soft forest duff. This subterranean niche is sheltered completely from the gentle night breeze, trapping a pocket of stable, temperate air that shields the resting body from the radiative cooling of the open prairie. Slipping beneath the heavy timber, the young ferret investigates the interior with slow, deliberate movements. The faint rustle of dry leaves marks its progress as it paws at the organic bedding, shaping the loose material into a comfortable depression. Here, tucked securely against the sturdy bulk of ancient wood, the environmental conditions are remarkably stable, offering a sanctuary where a developing predator can pause its nocturnal journey, lower its energetic output, and let the quiet pulse of the starlit meadow wash softly overhead. Within the secluded embrace of the decaying timber, the juvenile prepares for its physiological transition into deep rest. The young predator coils its slender, flexible body into a tight, compact sphere, drawing its paws inward and tucking its long nose gently beneath its tail. This classic mammalian sleeping posture is an evolutionary masterclass in thermoregulation. By minimizing its total exposed surface area, the ferret significantly reduces radiant heat loss to the surrounding night air, ensuring its core metabolic temperature remains stable throughout the resting hours. The process of settling is gradual and deliberate. A slow, noticeable unwinding of muscular tension ripples down the length of the spine. The shoulders drop, the taut muscles of the hind legs relax, and the rhythmic rise and fall of the ribs becomes noticeably deeper and more measured. Every physiological system shifts downward from high alert to restorative conservation, allowing the developing body to process the evening's sensory mapping while it sleeps. Faint sounds drift softly from the open meadow beyond the log, the distant chirp of crickets and the low hum of summer insects, now rendered muffled and harmless against the sturdy barrier of aged wood. Enveloped in the dry scent of leaf litter and damp earth, the young ferret surrenders completely to gravity and fatigue. With each slow, rhythmic cycle of respiration, stillness settles deeper into the hollow, matching the peaceful, unhurried pulse of the starlit prairie outside. Deep in the midnight hour, the grassland settles into a profound and heavy stillness. Under the vast, star-studded expanse of the summer sky, the nocturnal ecosystem hums with a quiet, steady pulse. Within the secure, sheltered hollow beneath the moss-covered log, the juvenile ferret drifts further into the restorative depths of slow-wave sleep. Respiration slows to an unhurried, graceful cadence. With every gentle cycle of the chest, the young predator's breathing falls into a natural synchronization with the world outside, matching the soft rustling of tall grasses and the distant, soothing chorus of crickets. This rhythmic exchange of air is more than just rest, it is a vital metabolic pause. During this deep sleep, the ferret's body efficiently redistributes energy, consolidating the day's complex neurological mapping and supporting the rapid skeletal and muscular development characteristic of its juvenile stage. The cool night air drifts lightly across the meadow, carrying the faint, earthy aromas of damp soil and dried leaves. But inside the microhabitat of the log, the atmosphere remains warm and stable. The tight, compact ball of fur acts as an effective thermal shield, preserving precious body heat against the gentle chill of the open prairie. Time stretches endlessly across the midnight landscape. There are no sudden movements, no urgent hunts, only the quiet ticking of the natural world resting in total peace. The stars wheel slowly overhead across the velvet darkness, marking the imperceptible transition toward the eventual arrival of dawn. For now, the meadow rests, wrapped in a blanket of calm, cradling the sleeping ferret in undisturbed serenity. The air above the summer meadow hangs heavy and still, chilled by the final hours of darkness. Before the eastern horizon yields to the first amber stain of dawn, a profound quiet settles over the grassland. Dew collects in heavy, glistening droplets upon the tips of the swordgrass and wild clover, bending each stem under a fragile weight of moisture. Through this damp, fragrant labyrinth moves a solitary shape. No longer tethered to the bustling warmth of the natal burrow, the young ferret navigates the terrain with a deliberate, unhurried grace. Every movement is an exercise in rising independence. Its sleek guard hairs part the chill foliage effortlessly, while sensitive vibrissae sweep the air, cataloging a rich tapestry of nocturnal scents left by passing moths and foraging voles. At this transitional hour, atmospheric pressure dips subtly, and the ambient temperature reaches its lowest ebb. For a young carnivore undergoing rapid metabolic maturation, these thermal cues are vital. The cool air demands efficient internal heat regulation, stimulating a sophisticated physiological shift as the body prepares for the sun's eventual return. Slow, measured heartbeats sustain the ferret through the damp undergrowth, conserving precious energy reserves. Above, the last recalcitrant crickets slow their rhythmic chirping, yielding the soundscape to the gentle, hypnotic dripping of dew from leaf to leaf. The distant night wind whispers softly across the valley, carrying the crisp scent of damp earth and awakening flora. The young ferret pauses for a moment atop a small earthen mound, its dark eyes reflecting the vast, dim expanse of the pre-dawn sky, fully attuned to the quiet rhythm of a changing world. The instinct to wander outward, away from the familiar underground chambers of birth and sibling play, is written deep within the young carnivore's widening neurological pathways. Months of shared warmth and social grooming give way to an internal drive for autonomy. This physiological shift is governed by a surge of hormones that recalibrate the ferret's territorial boundaries, urging it to seek out untrod earth and uncharted scent lines. To claim a personal home range is a biological necessity for survival, ensuring adequate prey density and minimized competition as summer reaches its zenith. Every stride taken through the cool grass represents a quiet severing of juvenile ties. The young predator no longer relies on the collective vigilance of a litter, depending instead upon its own acute senses to interpret the landscape. Pausing beside a weathered limestone outcrop, the ferret engages in deliberate scent-marking behaviors. Glands situated along the base of its tail leave a subtle, enduring chemical signature upon the stone, a quiet declaration of presence to any passing rival and a personal anchor in an expanding world. This chemical mapping transforms neutral territory into a familiar sanctuary. As the solitary animal continues its steady march, the psychological transition from dependent kit to self-reliant adult solidifies. The vastness of the grassland, once intimidating, now offers infinite potential. Solitude is no longer a void, but a rich, unwritten space defined by the rhythmic padding of small paws against the soil, the steady consumption of nocturnal data, and the quiet confidence of a life beginning to truly unfold beneath the pale, pre-dawn sky. Beneath the tangled root system of a sprawling wild rose, a low, rounded opening reveals itself among the dew-soaked turf. It is a secondary burrow, newly excavated and smelling faintly of turned limestone and cool, damp earth. Driven by the innate need for secure resting sites across an expanding range, the young ferret pauses at the threshold. Its pink nose twitches rapidly, cataloging the odorless microclimate within, a still, undisturbed pocket of air protected from the vast, open canopy above. Slipping headfirst into the narrow tunnel, the slender predator descends into the dark. Its flexible spine and low-slung frame allow for effortless movement through the confined corridor, which drops gently before leveling into a compact subterranean chamber. Here, away from the drying pre-dawn winds, the ambient temperature stabilizes. The surrounding topsoil and dense root mass act as natural thermal regulators, promising both insulation against the midday heat and a fortress of structural safety. Inside the chamber, the ferret begins a thorough inspection. It circles the perimeter, pressing its flanks against the earthen walls to deposit a familiar musk, claiming the space as its own temporary sanctuary. Every grain of soil and stray root tip is examined with intense neurological focus, ensuring no foreign scent lingers from previous inhabitants. Satisfied by the shelter's integrity, the solitary animal begins to wind down. The high metabolic demands of the growing season necessitate deep, restorative rest, and this secluded pocket beneath the summer shrub offers the ideal womb for recovery, shielding the resting body as the world above transitions toward dawn. Curled into a loose, comfortable crescent upon the bare earth, the young predator surrenders to the quiet safety of the subterranean vault. Yet, even as its muscles slacken and its breathing slows, the brain remains wonderfully active. Within the darkness of the chamber, a complex neurological ledger begins to balance itself. The countless olfactory molecules gathered during the pre-dawn wanderings are systematically sorted, filed, and woven into a detailed map of the surrounding grassland. Every scent signature collected across the dew-heavy terrain is replayed in miniature electric pulses along the ferret's developing neural pathways. The sharp, musky trace of a passing vole along the ridge, the rich mineral tang of wet limestone exposed by a recent summer shower, and the sweet, lingering perfume of wild clover are all catalogued. This remarkable process of sensory integration transforms raw environmental data into enduring spatial memory. The mustelid is not merely resting, it is learning the invisible boundaries of its expanding world, reinforcing the cognitive landmarks that will guide future nocturnal hunts. Gradually, the rapid firing of daytime alertness softens into the slow, restorative rhythms of deep sleep. A gentle decrease in core body temperature accompanies this transition, conserving vital metabolic energy during the sunlit hours of rest. Soft, rhythmic breathing fills the tiny chamber, harmonizing with the faint, muffled settling of earth far above. In this sanctuary of quiet earth, every twitch of a whisker and every quiet sigh processes the vast summer landscape, preparing the young explorer for the next night under the stars. Deep within the earthen alcove, the core temperature of the young mustelid gently drifts downward, a measured physiological response designed to conserve precious energy through the scorching hours of the approaching afternoon. Respiration slows into an even, predictable cadence, perfectly synchronized with the muffled, rhythmic settling of the soil high above. This profound metabolic deceleration marks the onset of true torpor, a state of deep, restorative rest where the body turns its immense focus inward. As the heart rate settles into a steady, unhurried rhythm, cellular repair accelerates across every muscle fiber and neurological pathway. The microscopic wear and tear of a long, nocturnal trek through dew-laden grass is patiently mended, and the vital reserves depleted during the hunt are meticulously replenished. In this shadowed sanctuary, the boundaries between sleeper and earth dissolve entirely. The soft, rhythmic breathing of the resting animal becomes the only sound within the hollow, blending harmoniously with the distant, muffled weight of the summer world above. Here, suspended in the quiet peace of the subterranean vault, the young predator rests completely, trusting the safety of the dark earth to shelter its growing independence until the long shadows of evening return to awaken the grassland once again. Hours pass in stillness, measured only by the gradual warming of the subterranean earth. Slowly, deep within the chamber, metabolic rates begin their gentle upward climb. The core temperature rises, synchronized with the subtle thermal shifts, filtering down through the layers of topsoil and roots. It is a natural biological awakening, heralded by the nervous system shifting back to full alertness without startling or abrupt movement. The young ferret stirs with a long, unhurried stretch, extending sleek paws and arching its spine against the cool floor of the alcove. Whiskers twitch as they catch the shifting currents of air circulating from the entrance. The heavy, stagnant dampness of the night has yielded to a drier, sun-warmed breeze, carrying the faint, distant scent of ripening grasses above. A soft yawn breaks the quiet of the den. The transition from deep torpor to wakefulness is smooth and deliberate, a testament to a growing body well adapted to the rhythms of the seasons. Fully restored, the animal blinks in the dim light, its senses recalibrating to the world outside. The long rest has bridged the hours between night and day, leaving the young predator centered and ready, attuned to the quiet, rolling transitions of the summer landscape just beyond the threshold. Across the slumbering orchard, a profound quiet settles as the first true breath of autumn paints the landscape in silver. A delicate mantle of morning frost clings to the dormant grasses and gnarled apple bark, turning the nocturnal moisture into a shimmering crust. Far above, distant flocks of migrating birds call softly through the graying sky, riding a high, cold wind that signals the turning of the year. Deep beneath the frosted soil, within a secluded earthen chamber lined with dry, summer-bleached grasses, a solitary young adult ferret stirs. As the crisp, invigorating air trickles down the narrow tunnel, it gently awakens ancient physiological rhythms. The drop in ambient temperature acts as a natural biological cue, prompting metabolic shifts that prepare the slender mustelid for the leaner months ahead. Slowly, the young animal unfurls its remarkably long, flexible spine, extending its front paws forward in a deep, yawning stretch that releases the stiffness of the night. Every vertebra aligns with fluid grace, a testament to an anatomical design perfected for navigating tight underground labyrinths. Its short, muscular legs adjust to the chill, feeling the subtle drop in warmth against its thick undercoat. A soft, faint crunch echoes from the surface as the frozen ground adjusts to the rising dawn. The ferret pauses, its dark, obsidian eyes blinking away the shadows of the den, while its wet, sensitive rhinarium, the tip of the nose, twitches eagerly. It samples the drifting morning air, detecting the rich, damp aroma of decaying leaf mold and the sharp, clean bite of approaching frost. Fully awake and attuned to the changing world, the young hunter prepares to meet the new season. Emerging from the shadowy mouth of the burrow, the young ferret steps cautiously onto a dense, undulating blanket of fallen foliage. The orchard floor has transformed into a vibrant mosaic of amber, bronze, and gold woven from months of shedding canopy. With each delicate placement of its paws, a soft, dry rustle whispers through the stillness. A gentle friction of crisp maple and apple leaves brushing against sleek guard hairs. This deep layer of organic debris serves as a bustling microhabitat, and the mustelid's senses immediately register the shift. As the morning breeze drifts across the orchard, it carries a complex orchestra of new seasonal scents, the rich, earthy perfume of decomposing cellulose, the sweet remnants of fallen, fermented fruit, and the sharp, mineral tang of cold morning dew. The ferret's exceptionally sensitive rhinarium works in rhythmic twitches, sorting through the olfactory tapestry with microscopic precision. Moving forward, the low-slung body glides just inches above the soil. Its short, muscular limbs distribute weight evenly over the unstable, rustling carpet, preventing it from sinking into the damp soil beneath. The cool, ambient air washes over its thickening winter coat, triggering physiological adaptations that prompt the dense underfur to trap precious body heat. Every movement through the crackling leaves is deliberate and measured, trading the frantic energy of juvenile play for the quiet, calculated grace of an independent hunter mapping its changing world. Pausing by a moss-covered boulder, the low-slung predator halts its forward motion, It lifts its wet, pink rhinarium toward the shifting air currents, perfectly adapted for analyzing the invisible world of scent. Specialized receptors within the nasal cavity capture complex chemical signatures carried down from the woodland edge. Every breath tells a detailed story of the changing environment. The ferret detects the lingering, musky trail of a field vole that passed hours earlier, alongside the sharp, fermented tang of bruised apples settling deep into the cooling earth. Faint notes of drifting wood smoke mix with the rich, fungal aroma of damp soil and decaying leaf litter. This intricate olfactory map allows the mustelid to visualize its surroundings long before any movement registers in the dim morning light. By analyzing these aromatic cues, the young adult assesses the shifting availability of prey as autumn deepens. The dropping temperatures slow the metabolic rates of nearby insects and amphibians, yet stimulate heightened activity among small rodents preparing for winter. Each inhalation triggers a steady, physiological focus, honing the animal's hunting instincts against the frosted backdrop. With eyes half closed in deep concentration, the ferret filters out the background noise of the orchard, relying entirely on its acute sense of smell to interpret the quiet transition of the season. Turning away from the frost-rimmed stones, the ferret glides toward the base of a gnarled, ancient apple tree whose massive trunk anchors the edge of the orchard. Here, the boundary between the surface world and the subterranean labyrinth blurs. The mustelid's specialized anatomy, a remarkably elongated, flexible spinal column composed of extra vertebrae and short, powerful limbs, is a masterclass in evolutionary adaptation designed specifically for life within confined spaces. As it approaches a narrow opening between interlocking roots, the animal does not hesitate. It simply flows forward, its low-slung, tubular body compressing and lengthening in a continuous, liquid wave of motion. Beneath the soil, a complex architecture of thick roots and earthen channels opens up, creating a natural highway sheltered from the autumn chill. The ferret's supple frame allows it to navigate these tight, twisting tunnels with effortless grace, requiring zero lateral clearance beyond the diameter of its shoulders. Every curve of the spine accommodates the sharpest turns without friction. It slips through spaces that larger predators can only peer into, demonstrating a profound physiological design that turns subterranean barriers into pathways. The damp earth carries the faint, reassuring warmth of deep soil insulation, contrasting gently with the crisp morning air above. In this hidden realm of tangled wood and packed clay, the young adult moves with absolute confidence, fully at home in the quiet, shadowed architecture of the roots. Emerging once more into the pale dawn light, the ferret traces the perimeter of an ancient agricultural stone wall that bounds the orchard. Generations of frost and weathering have settled these moss-draped boulders into deep, stable piles, creating a labyrinth of dark crevices and sheltered stone niches. The cooler morning air carries a stimulating edge, quickening the mustelid's pulse and sharpening its instincts as it pauses to investigate a narrow gap between two granite slabs. With instantaneous precision, the young adult's reflexes are put to the test. A sudden, subtle shift of air within a dark cavity triggers an immediate, hardwired response. The body coils and uncoils in a fraction of a second, demonstrating the remarkable neural transmission speed required of a subterranean hunter. Every muscle is finely tuned for sudden acceleration in confined spaces. Yet, finding only the quiet stillness of resting stone, the ferret relaxes its posture, moving with unhurried grace along the rough masonry. As the sun climbs higher, casting long, gentle shadows across the frosted grass, the search for diurnal shelter begins. Tucked safely beneath a deep overhang of stacked slate, the ferret discovers a secure, snug nook lined with dry grasses and fallen leaves from previous seasons. It curls its long, tubular body into a compact, protective circle, wrapping its bushy tail gently around its nose to conserve warmth. The steady rhythm of its breathing slows in harmony with the quiet autumn morning, blending into the peaceful stillness of the resting earth. Within this secluded sanctuary of slate and soil, the young adult ferret begins to settle completely. The morning sun continues its slow ascent, casting a soft, golden warmth over the frosted orchard floor outside. But deep within the sheltering alcove, the air remains still and gentle. Here, physiological mechanisms of energy conservation take over. As the ambient temperature shifts, the mustelid's metabolic rate gracefully dips, allowing the body to enter a profound state of restorative rest. Every muscle along the elongated spine softens, releasing the residual tension of the early dawn's hunt. The heartbeat slows to a steady, rhythmic cadence, perfectly attuned to the tranquil environment. Outside the protective overhang, the crisp autumn wind gently sighs through the thinning branches, accompanied by the faint, distant calls of migrating birds journeying toward warmer southern skies. These subtle, natural melodies serve as a soothing lullaby, wrapping the resting creature in a cocoon of absolute peace. Surrounded by the comforting scent of dry earth and ancient moss, the ferret drifts deeper into slumber. The rhythmic rise and fall of its sleek, furred flank match the quiet breathing of the sleeping forest. In this sheltered nook, far from the waking demands of the changing season, the young hunter rests, gathering strength and restoring vitality beneath the quiet beauty of the autumn morning. The low, slanted rays of the late autumn sun strike the exposed earth of the steep clay bank, painting the fractured soil in warm shades of amber and rust. Against this quiet backdrop, surrounded by the soft rustle of dry grass and the faint, distant whispering of wind over the ridge, the mature ferret begins its slow, waking transition. Deep within its sheltered daytime resting place, the mustelid's high metabolic furnace gradually shifts gears from diurnal torpor to active twilight awareness. A long, fluid stretching motion ripples down the length of its slender spine, flexing muscles that have evolved over millennia for specialized underground locomotion. The dense, insulating winter undercoat, newly thickened for the cooling season, shifts softly as the animal rises. Stepping cautiously toward the threshold of the den, the ferret pauses in the crisp, cooling air. A delicate pink nose twitches rhythmically, sampling the atmospheric currents. Specialized olfactory receptors catch the complex chemical signatures carried on the gentle breeze, traces of damp earth, decaying foliage, and the faint, unmistakable musk of subterranean dwellers sharing the ecosystem. Above, a scattering of dry leaves gives a gentle rustle as a stray autumn gust brushes past the exposed roots of an old hawthorn tree. Faint bird calls drift down from the darkening canopy, signaling the slow turning of the day. The ferret stands motionless for a long moment, completely attuned to the rhythms of the woodland edge. Perfectly poised at the yawning mouth of the dark earthen tunnels below. To understand the subterranean mastery of the mustelid family, one must look to the remarkable architecture of the skeleton itself. The ferret possesses an elongated spinal column featuring an increased number of vertebrae compared to larger mammals of a similar mass. This architectural marvel grants the spine an exceptional degree of lateral and dorsal flexibility, allowing the body to bend, twist, and flow through restricted spaces with liquid ease. Short, powerfully muscled legs operate parallel to the ground rather than beneath it, keeping the ferret's center of gravity remarkably low. This stance minimizes resistance within narrow earthen passages, enabling the hunter to glide through underground galleries without friction or wasted effort. When a tunnel abruptly narrows or terminates in a dead end, this extraordinary spinal mobility allows the animal to execute a complete, continuous reversal of direction within a space barely wider than its own shoulders, a rare anatomical feat among predators. Every component of this slender physique serves the singular demands of the burrow ecosystem. Ribs are narrow and slightly collapsible, accommodating the compression required to squeeze through constricted subterranean arteries carved by generations of rodents. As the ferret moves deeper into the clay bank, its body acts as an organic piston, perfectly matched to the dimensions of the dark world it inhabits. The ferret slips headfirst into a dark burrow opening, leaving the golden autumn light behind. Within the cool embrace of the clay bank, absolute darkness prevails, yet the hunter requires no sight to navigate. Vision yields entirely to a sophisticated network of touch and scent. As the slender body glides forward, long, sensitive vibrissae, or whiskers, sweep rhythmically across the damp earth walls. These specialized tactile hairs bend to the slightest contour of the packed soil, instantly mapping the width and texture of the subterranean corridor. Simultaneously, the moist, pink-nosed rhinarium captures microscopic scent trails left hours earlier by passing rodents. The ferret's olfactory receptors decipher these chemical footprints with remarkable precision, reading the invisible history of the tunnel to determine the direction and freshness of the trail. Every movement remains deliberate and quiet. The muffled scratching of paws against packed clay blends with the profound silence of the deep earth. By combining stereoscopic touch with acute olfaction, the mustelid constructs a vivid mental landscape in the pitch black. It flows through the branching labyrinth like water, guided entirely by the ancient language of scent and the gentle, sweeping touch of its whiskers against the welcoming stone. Moving deeper into the earthen network, the ferret demonstrates fluid, snake-like locomotion. Because mustelids possess an exceptionally elongated spinal column composed of extra vertebrae and uniquely modified joints, the body can bend and twist with remarkable range. This specialized skeletal architecture allows the hunter to reverse direction effortlessly within a tunnel barely wider than its own shoulders, eliminating any need to turn around in a clumsy arc. Every movement is calculated and deliberate. Short, muscular limbs keep the center of gravity consistently low, distributing weight evenly across the damp floor to conserve precious metabolic energy. There is no wasted motion, no frantic scratching, and no hurried acceleration. Instead, the ferret glides forward with steady, rhythmic propulsion, the ribcage compressing smoothly as it slips through narrow bottlenecks and expanding just as easily in broader subterranean chambers. This measured pace maintains constant vigilance and physiological readiness. By avoiding bursts of unnecessary exertion, the ferret preserves its internal warmth and prevents the rapid depletion of its high basal metabolic rate, which demands a delicate balance between active hunting and energy conservation. The muscles work in synchronized waves, rippling beneath a dense undercoat of autumn fur that provides both thermal insulation and protection against the abrasive clay walls. As the tunnel slopes downward into quiet stillness, the hunter pauses for a fleeting moment. It rests its weight evenly on all four paws, blending seamlessly into the cool, earthy dark. The heartbeat slows to a steady, calm rhythm, perfectly attuned to the hushed atmosphere of the subterranean world, ready to resume its gentle drift whenever the scent trails call. The damp earthen aroma shifts subtly, growing richer and distinctly warmer. The scent trail, traced so patiently through the maze of abandoned tunnels, concentrates now in a narrow alcove just ahead. The ferret pauses, pressing its wet nose close to the clay floor. Every microscopic shift in the air current is registered by the sensitive vibrissae framing its muzzle, mapping the unseen space with absolute clarity. Without a sound, the hunter slips into the small resting chamber. There is no sudden rush, no frantic burst of speed. Rather, it is a fluid, inevitable extension of movement. As the resting rodent stirs in the darkness, the ferret reacts with the lightning-fast reflexes characteristic of an obligate carnivore. The predatory motor pattern unfolds with flawless biological economy. A swift, precise lunge bridges the short distance, and powerful jaws secure the catch with instantaneous efficiency. In the dim stillness of the subterranean earth, the struggle is brief and silent. The specialized dentition, designed specifically for dispatching prey quickly and cleanly, fulfills its evolutionary purpose. As the motion subsides, the ferret settles gently over the meal, its high metabolic demands met through this direct, instinctive act of survival. There is a deep, quiet alignment between the hunter's anatomical design and the necessities of the ecosystem it inhabits. The warmth of the nourishment restores internal energy, balancing the physiological cost of the hunt. Slowly, the low hum of the autumn wind outside fades into the gentle, heavy quiet of the clay bank, leaving the solitary mustelid resting peacefully in the dark heart of the earth. With the high energy demands of its metabolism now fully satisfied, the ferret begins a slow, methodical ritual of self-care. In the quiet sanctuary of the earthen alcove, it lifts a dust-dusted paw and begins to groom its dense autumn coat. Each movement is unhurried and deliberate. Using its specialized lower incisors, which act much like a fine-toothed comb, the hunter meticulously cleans the soft underfur, removing every trace of clay and field scent. Its pink tongue sweeps smoothly across its whiskers and long, flexible body, restoring the waterproof sheen of its guard hairs. This instinctive grooming behavior not only maintains optimal insulation against the cooling air above, but also helps calm the nervous system after the intense focus of the chase. As the quiet grooming tapers off, the ferret's breathing deepens and slows. The fierce internal furnace that drives mustelid biology begins to bank its fires, transitioning the animal from active predation into a state of restorative repose. Curled into a tight, compact circle, the ferret presses its nose against the base of its tail, tucking its short legs neatly beneath its elongated torso. This classic physiological ball shape conserves vital body heat as the ambient temperature outside drops steadily with the setting sun. The surrounding clay walls absorb the lingering warmth of the earth, enveloping the resting predator in a cocoon of profound stillness. Outside, the last amber rays of the autumn sunset fade from the sky above the bank, leaving the world wrapped in the gentle, cool quiet of night. As the late afternoon sun dips low toward the western horizon, spilling long amber shadows across the harvested agricultural fields, the mature ferret stirs from its temporary daytime refuge. The transition from dormancy to wakefulness is gradual, guided by the steady drop in temperature and the changing quality of light. The cool, crisp autumn air carries the fresh scents of damp earth and frost-kissed grasses, signaling to the sensitive nervous system of the mustelid that the evening active period has begun. Emerging slowly from beneath a tangle of exposed roots, the slender hunter stretches its supple spine, feeling the muscles awaken after hours of complete immobility. Its dark guard hairs shimmer with golden highlights in the fading light, while the dense underfur begins to trap a layer of insulating air, preparing the body for the chilly hours ahead. The world around the field border undergoes a gentle shift in sound. The soft rustling of dry autumn leaves beneath delicate paws joins the low, rhythmic hum of late-season crickets settling into the cooling soil. High above, the faint, fading call of a migrating bird drifts down from the upper atmosphere, marking the progression of the season. With measured, deliberate movements, the ferret steps out onto the well-worn pathways that trace the edge of the timberline. Every step is an exercise in sensory awareness, as thousands of tactile guard hairs brush against the surrounding vegetation, relaying precise information about the immediate surroundings. The fading daylight invites a calm, unhurried rhythm, setting the stage for the systematic patrol of a home range carefully established and fiercely maintained through the subtle language of chemistry. In this quiet borderland, navigation relies far less on sight than on a rich, invisible tapestry of chemistry. The mature ferret possesses highly developed apocrine and sebaceous scent glands, located near the base of the tail and along the flanks, which secrete a complex oily mixture of fatty acids and volatile organic compounds. This chemical signature is entirely unique, functioning as a biological passport that broadcasts the animal's exact identity, sex, and current physiological status to any passing rival. Approaching a prominent, moss-covered boulder that anchors the corner of the field, the ferret pauses. It aligns its flexible body against the rough, damp stone, methodically rubbing its flanks and the base of its tail over the uneven surface. A small, deliberate deposit of musk transfers to the raised landmark, sealing the perimeter of its established home range. A few yards further along, a decaying log catches its attention. The porous, weathered wood readily absorbs the potent secretion, holding the scent longer against the cooling autumn air. This silent communication maintains boundaries without the energetic cost of physical confrontation. By reading these molecular bulletins left upon bark and stone, neighboring mustelids instantly understand who patrols this territory. The ferret lingers for a moment, tasting the air with its moist rhinarium, analyzing the faint residue of another's passage before moving onward. Every marking reinforces a profound sense of place, turning the open wilderness into a familiar, reassuring map defined entirely by scent. Just beyond the decaying log, the ferret halts abruptly, its wet rhinarium, the naked, sensitive skin of its nose, twitching as it catches an unfamiliar trace in the breeze. It lowers its head toward the base of a thick, stubborn tuft of fescue grass where another solitary mustelid has recently passed. This is a shared intersection, a quiet crossroads in the hedgerow where invisible borders blur and overlap. With a series of rapid, delicate inhalations, the ferret decodes the lingering organic compounds left behind on the dew-kissed blades. The vomeronasal organ, situated deep within the nasal cavity, processes the non-volatile chemical cues with astonishing precision. Through this specialized sensory pathway, the animal reads a detailed biological profile. It distinguishes the age, sex, and hormonal state of the intruder, recognizing the subtle signature of a neighbor traversing the outer edge of its home range. There is no bristling of fur, no frantic scrambling for dominance. Instead, a deep, adaptive stillness settles over the hunter. In the nocturnal economy of the field border, direct physical conflict carries too high a metabolic cost. Chemistry replaces confrontation. The foreign scent tells a story of peaceful passage from earlier in the afternoon, a ghost of movement fading beneath the cooling autumn sky. Satisfied by the intelligence gathered from the soil and grass, the ferret lets out a barely perceptible exhale. It lifts its head, clears its nasal passages with a soft twitch, and gently turns its sleek body away from the shared post. The invisible map has been successfully updated, confirming that its quiet domain remains balanced and secure within the breathing expanse of the evening world. Across these rich agricultural transition zones, establishing a stable home range is an exquisite exercise in energy conservation. For a solitary carnivore like the mature ferret, every calorie expended must be weighed against the caloric return of the hunt. Physical combat over hunting rights is inherently wasteful, risking injury and burning precious fat reserves that are vital for surviving the approaching winter. By maintaining clear, well-scented boundaries, the mustelid practices a sophisticated form of remote diplomacy. The persistent chemical markers left along the hedgerow act as silent sentinels, broadcasting occupancy and vigor to any rival that happens to wander near. When a neighboring hunter encounters these potent secretions, the biological message is unmistakably clear. This territory is actively patrolled, its resources already claimed. This invisible fence of musk and glandular oils reduces the frequency of aggressive encounters, allowing both animals to forage along the overlapping fringes without ever locking jaws. The landscape becomes a patchwork of mutually respected zones, maintained entirely through olfactory etiquette. It is a harmonious system governed by chemistry rather than claws, ensuring that the fragile balance of the ecosystem remains undisturbed as the long evening shadows stretch across the stubble fields. As the brilliant amber hues of sunset slowly dissolve into the deep indigo of twilight, the autumn air grows perceptibly crisper. The low, steady hum of late-season crickets begins to soften in the cooling grass, and the gentle rustle of the evening wind carries the scent of damp earth and frost-touched leaves. For the mature ferret, this subtle shift in temperature triggers an ancient biological transition. The urgent drive to patrol and maintain boundaries gently recedes, replaced by the deep, restorative pull of sleep. The pace of its journey slows from a purposeful trot to a measured, deliberate stroll, turning away from the open expanses of the agricultural field. The mustelid directs its sensitive whiskers toward the permanent security of subterranean cover. Metabolic conservation now takes precedence. As the ambient temperature drops, the ferret's body prepares for rest by lowering its internal thermostat, a mild preparatory step toward true torpor that will safely preserve its vital fat reserves through the cold night hours. Every movement becomes economical, unhurried, and quiet against the faint scratching sounds of dry earth beneath its paws. Ahead lies a heavy, ancient stone wall, its tumbled architecture offering a maze of secure, sheltered crevices. The ferret investigates a narrow opening between two moss-covered rocks, testing the air for drafts and absolute safety. Satisfied that the interior is hidden from the prying eyes of nocturnal owls and larger mammalian hunters, the slender animal slips gracefully into the darkened recess, leaving the quiet fields to the stillness of the approaching night. Deep within the shadowed embrace of the stone wall, the ferret finds an inner chamber lined with dry grasses and fallen leaves collected over many seasons. This secluded alcove shields the slender hunter from the biting evening chill, offering a microclimate of stable warmth and profound quiet. Preparing for rest, the mustelid begins a familiar bedtime ritual. It tucks its long, flexible tail neatly around its body, then curves its spine into a tight, compact sphere. This classic sleeping posture drastically reduces its surface area to volume ratio, an essential adaptation for maximizing heat retention and minimizing metabolic energy expenditure during the cold autumn night. As the ferret settles into the soft bedding, its respiration deepens and slows to a rhythmic, soothing cadence. Its heart rate drops significantly, entering the initial stages of a restorative torpor that lowers body temperature and conserves precious fat reserves. The subtle scratching sounds of paws adjusting the bedding fade entirely, replaced by the deep stillness of the subterranean sanctuary. Outside, the autumn wind whispers harmlessly across the stone face, but inside this sheltered alcove, the mature hunter drifts into an undisturbed, profound slumber. Every muscle relaxes completely, releasing the tensions of the territorial patrol. Surrounded by the scent of damp earth and ancient stone, the ferret rests in absolute peace, wrapped in the quiet comfort of the fading night. As the last amber glow of the late autumn sun slips beneath the horizon, a sharp, crisp wind above sweeps across the frosted meadow. The temperature plummets with the vanishing daylight, carrying the unmistakable bite of approaching winter. Deep beneath the stiffened soil, the mature ferret pauses its evening movements, its sensitive nose twitching as it registers the sudden shift in barometric pressure and the plummeting air currents. Nature's ancient calendar speaks clearly in these invisible atmospheric cues. Evolution has finely tuned the mustelid's nervous system to detect the subtle drop in ambient heat long before the frost forms on the blades of dead grass outside. Each whisker catches the microcurrents of cooling air, signaling that the surface world is rapidly losing its warmth. Above, the rustling dry straw and distant rustling leaves settle into stillness under the darkening sky, stripped of autumn's loose vitality by the tightening grip of the cold. The ferret's thick, newly developed winter coat, a marvel of natural insulation featuring dense, downy underfur and long, water-repellent guard hairs, fluffs slightly to trap the remaining body heat, sealing the animal within a personal microclimate. Yet, The wisdom of the mature hunter dictates caution rather than exploration. Guided by instinct and the quiet rhythms of the cooling earth, the ferret abandons its twilight foraging path. With deliberate, fluid grace, it turns its steps inward, retracing the familiar tunnels toward the safety of the main burrow. The faint earth settling sounds around it like a gentle closing door, easing the animal away from the blustery evening and drawing it ever closer to the profound, sheltered quiet of the subterranean world below. Within the absolute safety of the subterranean chamber, the mature ferret pauses to groom, an instinctive ritual that awakens the remarkable biology of its seasonal adaptation. The transformation of the pelt is a masterclass in mammalian thermoregulation, perfectly timed to combat the severe frost settling into the ground above. The coat undergoes a profound structural shift as the weeks grow colder. Beneath the surface lies a remarkably dense layer of fine underfur. These microscopic, crimped fibers function as a natural thermal trap, locking in a microscopic cushion of air warmed by the ferret's own metabolism. Overlaid upon this soft, insulating down are the longer, coarser guard hairs. These specialized bristles possess a sleek, water-repellent quality that deflects subterranean dampness and seals out any stray drafts seeping through the earthen walls. Together, the dual-layered pelt acts as an impenetrable shield against the elements. Each individual hair follicle adjusts in response to the skin's thermal receptors, fluffing the fur to maximize loft when the ambient chill deepens. This biological armor allows the slender predator to maintain a steady, comfortable core body temperature without expending excess energy. As the ferret continues its slow, methodical grooming, it presses its sleek body against the cool walls of the den. Testing the efficiency of its winter coat, the dense fibers compress gently and then spring back, perfectly engineered to retain maximum loft and insulating capacity. Enveloped in this luxurious natural quilt, the mustelid settles deeper into the resting chamber, ready to let the cold world fade away into a profound restorative peace. With the seasonal coat fully prepared to meet the frost, the mature ferret turns its attention inward, focusing on the architecture of its subterranean haven. Moving through the winding earthen tunnels with practiced ease, the mustelid enters the deep resting chamber where a rich harvest of natural insulation awaits. For weeks, the hunter has gathered the finest materials from the fading autumn forest above: sun-dried grasses, crisp fallen leaves, and carpets of velvety woodland moss. Now, in the quiet evening hours, this loose assemblage requires careful arrangement to achieve optimal thermal efficiency. Using its broad snout and nimble paws, the ferret gently manipulates the dried straw, shifting and tucking each blade into place. It burrows beneath the botanical layers, turning in slow, deliberate circles to press the soft plant matter firmly against the earthen floor and curved walls. This rhythmic kneading compresses the dry vegetation into a thick, uniform quilt. The millions of microscopic air pockets trapped within the hollow stems of the grass will act as a secondary barrier, preventing the chill radiating from the frozen soil from reaching the sleeping animal. Every gap is meticulously sealed. The ferret nudges a final mouthful of soft moss into the narrow entryway of the nest, completely cutting off any stray drafts that might manage to filter down from the surface world. Inside this newly perfected sanctuary, the ambient air warms quickly, captured and held by the dense nest architecture. Satisfied with the cozy enclosure, the ferret pauses, surrounded by the comforting, earthy scent of dried autumn foliage, perfectly sheltered from the biting wind above. With the chamber securely sealed against the encroaching cold, the mature ferret prepares to transition into its deepest state of rest. It settles into the center of the cushioned botanical nest, beginning a transformation of physical form designed by millennia of evolutionary survival. The mustelid's elongated, muscular body begins to fold. With slow, fluid grace, the ferret tucks its chin downward toward its chest, drawing its hind limbs tightly against its warm torso. Its long, plumed tail wraps completely around its body, forming a protective, furry crescent that bridges the final gap between nose and paws. This behavior achieves a remarkable physiological advantage, the minimization of surface area to volume ratio. By curving into an extraordinarily tight, nearly perfect spherical shape, the ferret drastically reduces the expanse of skin and fur directly exposed to the surrounding air. In biological terms, less exposed surface area means significantly less thermal energy lost to the environment. Every extension of the frame is tucked inward. The delicate paws, where blood vessels flow close to the surface, are sheltered safely against the belly. The nose, responsible for taking in the cool ambient air, is buried beneath the dense insulation of the tail, allowing the exhaled warmth to gently preheat incoming breaths. Surrounded by layers of earth, moss, and dry straw, the ferret becomes a self-contained hearth. The dual-layered winter pelt fluffs outward, sealing microscopic pockets of warm air directly against the skin. In this quiet, cradled posture, the animal rests as a single, harmonious unit of conserved heat, perfectly adapted to weather the long, frozen night ahead. Within the absolute dark of the subterranean chamber, a profound internal shift mirrors the stillness of the freezing earth above. As sleep takes complete hold of the mature ferret, the central nervous system signals a dramatic metabolic transformation. The rapid, high-octane energy consumption required for autumn hunting slows, yielding to a state of controlled dormancy designed to stretch dwindling nutritional reserves across the long winter. Deep inside the warm sphere of fur, internal organs adjust to the chill of the season. The ferret's heart, which moments before beat swiftly with the exertion of the day, drops into a slow, remarkably steady cadence. Each pulse delivers just enough oxygen-rich blood to sustain vital tissues, husbanding every drop of stored fat. Respiration follows this peaceful descent. The animal's breathing deepens, settling into a quiet, rhythmic pattern that echoes the gentle shifting of the soil far overhead. In and out the air moves, soft and unhurried, minimizing the moisture and heat lost through the lungs. This remarkable physiological adaptation, refined through generations of evolution, allows the mustelid to lower its core body temperature slightly, bridging the gap between active wakefulness and deep restorative torpor. The chamber remains entirely still, save for the faint, comforting cadence of the sleeper. Shielded from the biting wind, held safely within layers of earth and dry straw, the ferret rests in total equilibrium. The cold may reign across the surface of the world, but down here, life has mastered the art of quiet endurance, resting undisturbed until the dawn returns. Above the vaulted ceiling of the den, the late autumn frost claims the nocturnal landscape. Crisp wind sweeps across the barren fields, tracing skeletal branches and glazing the dormant ground in glittering ice. Yet down in the deep earth, none of this surface chill intrudes. The subterranean silence is absolute, occasionally softened only by the faint settling of ancient soil or the distant, muffled rustling of dry leaves caught in the grip of the freeze. The chamber holds a steady, protected temperature, buffering the sleeping hunter from the dramatic drop in outdoor conditions. Here, time seems to stretch and blur, measured not by hours or seasons, but by the slow, restorative cadence of breath. Every physiological mechanism is finely tuned to endurance. The dense underfur and oil-rich guard hairs form an impenetrable thermal barrier, locking in the residual warmth generated by the curled, compact form. Safe within this subterranean womb, the ferret drifts deeper into slumber. The world above may continue to freeze under the vast, starlit sky, but the mustelid rests in profound peace, completely insulated by earth, instinct, and time. In this quiet place of shadows and stillness, autumn yields fully to winter, cradling the resilient hunter in a timeless, restorative embrace. The pale harvest moon casts a soft, silvery glow across the empty agricultural fields, illuminating a landscape that is finally yielded to the quiet hush of late autumn. A gentle wind whispers through the stiff, stubbled stalks of corn, carrying the crisp scent of approaching frost. High above, a distant owl lets out a low, resonant call, its voice drifting softly over the sleeping earth. Moving with deliberate, unhurried grace across the frosted ground is a mature ferret. Every step is guided by an acute sensory awareness honed by seasons of survival. The mustelid's sleek, low-slung body glides smoothly over the soil, its sensitive nose reading the invisible chemical map of the night air. In this cool, dense atmosphere, olfactory receptors capture the faint, sweet trace of dormant life beneath the surface. As an experienced hunter, this adult animal possesses a remarkably efficient design for the changing year. A dense, insulating underfur has grown in densely beneath its glossy guard hairs, creating a vital thermal barrier against the dropping temperatures. With each measured movement, specialized physiological mechanisms work seamlessly to balance core body heat, conserving precious energy reserves built up over the abundant months. The cool air does not startle the seasoned traveler. Instead, it serves as a gentle, natural cue, urging the body toward the safety of shelter. Leaving the wide-open expanse of the harvested field behind, the ferret follows the curving contour of a high earthen embankment. The rustling leaves give way to absolute stillness as the path narrows, guiding the hunter steadily toward the quiet sanctuary waiting in the dark. Rising steadily from the edge of the abandoned field, the earthen embankment offers a masterpiece of subterranean architecture. This secure underground refuge, originally excavated by other small mammals long ago, has been thoroughly adopted and refined by the mustelid over successive generations. Its complex network of tunnels extends far below the frost line, where the surrounding soil acts as a powerful thermal mass. Ground temperatures at this depth remain remarkably stable, completely insulated from the biting, freezing gales sweeping across the open plains above. The mature ferret approaches a well-hidden entrance, screened by the tangled, fibrous roots of perennial grasses and protected by a slight overhang of packed soil. With fluid, liquid motion, the slender hunter compresses its supple spine and shoulders, slipping effortlessly through the narrow circular opening. There is no hesitation, only the absolute confidence of a creature perfectly adapted to subterranean navigation. The biomechanics of the ferret's elongated, tubular body allow it to travel through constricted spaces with minimal metabolic exertion, sliding smoothly into the dark. Inside, the tunnel slopes gently downward, dampening the faint, distant whistle of the autumn wind into a mere whisper of subterranean echoes. The heavy scent of rich earth, dry root systems, and ancient loam fills the narrow passage. As the animal moves deeper into the subterranean gloom, the temperature stabilizes completely, offering an immediate physiological release from the cooling night air. Every curve of the tunnel has been shaped by the compact soil, creating a structurally sound haven that requires no ongoing maintenance. Here, buried deep beneath the roots of the sleeping world, the seasoned hunter finds the ultimate security of the deep earth. At the terminus of the descending passage lies the heart of the subterranean refuge, a rounded subterranean chamber carved securely away from the drafts of the upper world. Here, the mature ferret begins the meticulous work of preparing its seasonal sanctuary. With practiced, deliberate movements, the mustelid gathers an accumulation of fine dried grasses, fallen oak leaves, and soft plant fibers previously cached within the tunnel system. Each blade of grass is carefully teased apart and woven into the existing foundation, creating a thick, resilient matrix designed to trap precious pockets of air, To enhance this natural insulation, the hunter pauses to groom its own dense autumn pelt. Using its sharp incisors, the ferret gently plucks stray tufts of fine, insulating underfur from its flanks, carefully incorporating the downy fibers directly into the center of the nest. This specialized winter undercoat, grown thick and dense in response to the shortening photoperiod of autumn, possesses millions of microscopic air spaces that act as a barrier against convective heat loss. The animal circles slowly within the accumulating materials, pressing its supple body downward to shape the loose vegetation into a compact, thermal-efficient sphere. It tucks its long tail neatly around its nose and paws, minimizing its exposed surface area to conserve precious core body heat. Every adjustment of the bedding is driven by an instinctive drive for energy conservation, maximizing the thermal gradient between the cold earth outside and the snug interior microclimate. Surrounded by the earthy scent of dry foliage and its own warm scent, the resting chamber becomes a masterpiece of physiological efficiency. The stillness of the deep earth embraces the small form, sealing it away from the autumn chill in total, quiet comfort. Within the velvet shadows of the underground nest, a profound physiological transformation gently takes hold. The mature ferret surrenders to the onset of torpor, a specialized state of metabolic depression common among solitary mustelids bracing for the lean months. As the animal curls tighter into its woven sphere of grasses and underfur, its internal thermostat begins a deliberate, measured descent. The heart, previously driving a rapid and high-energy rhythm suited for active nocturnal hunts, slows its cadence. Each beat grows fainter, pumping warmed blood through a constricted vascular network that prioritizes only the most vital core organs. Respiration follows suit, dropping to a slow, barely perceptible ebb and flow. With every soft, exhaled breath, the air within the microclimate of the nest warms just a fraction more, creating a self-sustaining envelope of heat. This metabolic downturn is an evolutionary masterpiece of thermal regulation. By reducing its body temperature closer to the ambient chill of the surrounding earth, the ferret dramatically slashes its daily caloric expenditure. Without the luxury of huddling with littermates, the solitary hunter relies entirely on this internal conservation strategy to safeguard its vital fat reserves against the prolonged cold. Faint, rhythmic breathing matches the hushed silence of the nocturnal world above. The nervous system relaxes its vigilant guard, letting go of the sensory awareness that governed the autumn fields. Muscular tension melts away, replaced by a heavy, restorative stillness. Cradled by the dense layers of insulation and the unwavering embrace of the deep earth, the small predator drifts deeper into peaceful, restorative sleep, perfectly attuned to the ancient, quiet rhythm of the changing seasons. Far above the sheltered subterranean chamber, the gentle wind brushes across the dormant agricultural stubble, carrying the distant, hollow hoot of an owl through the frosted night. Yet down within the earthen embankment, those surface sounds dissolve entirely. The soil acts as an effective acoustic blanket, absorbing the whispers of the autumn wind and replacing them with a profound, velvety quietude. Inside the resting chamber, the only motion is the barely perceptible rise and fall of the ferret's insulated flank. This faint breathing provides a steady, comforting cadence, harmonizing with the subtle settling of the earth overhead. The natural thermal mass of the surrounding soil maintains a remarkably stable microclimate, shielding the resting mustelid from the increasingly bitter temperatures gripping the open fields. The quiet hours drift onward, unmeasured and uneventful. Wrapped securely within the protective embrace of the earth, the mature predator experiences a restorative sleep unmarred by the demands of the hunt. Every physiological system operates at its most efficient, minimal level, preserving precious energy reserves as the natural world outside prepares for the inevitable arrival of winter's first pristine snowfall. Here, in the deep silence of the subterranean world, time slows to the gentle rhythm of the earth itself. As the night reaches its deepest hours, The temperature outside continues to drop steadily across the dormant landscape. A thin, crystalline skin of frost begins to form upon the exposed agricultural stubble, etching intricate patterns of ice across fallen leaves and frozen clods of earth. The gentle wind brushes over the upper crust of the soil, whispering of the meteorological shift that waits just beyond the threshold of dawn. Down within the secure earthen embankment, however, the mature ferret remains completely untouched by the sharpening chill. Cocooned securely within the thick insulation of its autumn pelt and the soft, woven lining of dried grasses, the mustelid rests in a state of profound physiological conservation. Its dense underfur traps a microscopic layer of warm air against the skin, functioning as a natural thermal barrier against the descending mercury. Every breath is slow and measured, drawing just enough oxygen to sustain baseline metabolic functions, while the body temperature subtly adjusts to match the stable, cool microclimate of the subterranean chamber. In this suspended state of deep rest, energy expenditures reach their absolute minimum, allowing the seasoned hunter to endure the harshest seasonal extremes with quiet resilience. Outside, the atmosphere grows stiller and heavier, charged with the subtle pressure of an impending weather change. The soil overhead absorbs the final vibrations of the autumn winds, holding firm as the silent precursors of winter gather in the upper atmosphere. Safe within its earthen haven, the ferret rests quietly poised, perfectly adapted for the arrival of the season's very first snow. Out across the open plains, the night yields slowly to a pale, pre-dawn twilight. Before the first amber gleam of morning touches the horizon, the sky surrenders to a profound, heavy silence. Delicate, feather-light flakes begin to drift downward, multiplying in the bitter air until a dense, unbroken curtain of white descends upon the earth. This is the season's first major snowfall, an atmospheric tide shifting with quiet, inexorable grace. With every drift that settles upon the frozen ground, a remarkable transformation takes place. The fresh layer of snow acts as a vast acoustic blanket, absorbing the ambient echoes of the wild. The rustle of dormant grasses and the distant crunch of frost-brittled brush vanish entirely, swallowed by the accumulating powder. Above ground, the ecosystem enters a state of deep, undisturbed peace. Wind gusts may howl across the open surface, driving powdery crests across the dunes, but their fierce voice is muffled, reduced to a low, distant sigh against the snowpack. Beneath this pristine white expanse, the landscape sleeps in hushed seclusion. The transition from autumn's chill to winter's absolute dominion happens not with a sudden shock, but through a gradual, enveloping hush. Nature draws a heavy quilt over the earth, sealing the frozen terrain in a timeless stillness. In this quiet realm, the frantic pace of survival yields to the profound, restorative calm of the frost, inviting the world to rest. Far beneath the frozen surface, shielded from the biting winds of the open plains, lies a subterranean sanctuary engineered by instinct and time. Descending deep through a narrow, winding tunnel, the frost gives way to a stable, sequestered microclimate. Here, buried safely beneath the frost line, the ambient temperature remains remarkably constant, buffered from the plunging sub-zero extremes of the winter night. At the terminus of this earthen passage rests a chamber lined with a dense, interwoven mattress of dried grasses, fine rootlets, and soft mammal fur collected over preceding moons. This specialized nesting material serves as an exceptional thermal barrier, trapping millions of microscopic air pockets that prevent the dissipation of body heat. As the seasoned adult settles into the heart of this organic insulation, every exhale warms the microscopic pockets of air within the den, creating a secure, self-sustaining pocket of warmth. In this subterranean refuge, the physics of thermoregulation work in quiet harmony with the physiology of the mustelid. The dense winter pelt, thickened by a proliferation of fine underfur beneath longer, coarser guard hairs, creates an additional layer of thermal resistance. As the ferret curls tightly inward, minimizing its surface-to-volume ratio, conduction and convection losses are reduced to near zero. The cold earth outside forms a silent, protective wall, enclosing the resting animal in a sanctuary where time seems to slow down, and the fierce chill of the snow-swept world above feels impossibly distant. Long before the first autumn leaf fell, an invisible transformation began within the ferret's physiology, quietly preparing skin and follicle for the approaching deep freeze. Now, in the heart of winter, this biological architecture reaches its absolute peak. The summer coat has been entirely replaced by a specialized double-layered pelt, a masterpiece of natural engineering designed explicitly for survival in sub-zero realms. Beneath the longer, coarser guard hairs lies a dense, luxurious underfur. This exceptionally fine layer traps countless microscopic pockets of still air against the skin, forming an impenetrable thermal barrier. Because still air is a poor conductor of heat, this trapped cushion prevents the ferret's core warmth from escaping into the chilled tunnels below. The longer guard hairs, meanwhile, act as a durable shield, deflecting moisture, frost crystals, and abrasive drafts that might otherwise penetrate the delicate undercoat. Together, these hairs work in concert with specialized piloerector muscles beneath the skin. When Wei Xiao De, tiny shivers of cold threaten the body, these minuscule muscles contract, causing the thick fur to stand slightly on end. This action maximizes loft, instantly increasing the thickness of the insulating air layer. As the ferret breathes softly into its nested chamber, the pelt responds to every subtle shift in temperature, self-adjusting to maintain a perfect, steady microclimate. Encased in this magnificent seasonal armor, the adult rests in supreme comfort, fully adapted to endure the longest and coldest of winter nights. Outside the subterranean sanctuary, the surface winds howl across the frozen plains, driving fine powdery snow against the drifts. Yet deep within the insulated chamber, those violent gusts are reduced to nothing more than a faint, distant sigh against the earth. Here, protected by layers of soil and snow, the seasoned ferret initiates a remarkable physiological shift, a profound metabolic conservation designed to outlast the storm. As the external temperature plummets, the ferret's body performs a delicate internal adjustment known as metabolic suppression. The central nervous system signals the heart to reduce its pumping frequency, slowing the pulse to a steady, unhurried rhythm. Blood flow is expertly prioritized, directing essential warmth inward to the vital organs while allowing the extremities to cool slightly. This controlled downregulation drastically reduces the animal's caloric expenditure, effectively stretching its stored energy reserves through the bitterest days of winter. Respiration matches this tranquil tempo, slowing into deep, rhythmic breaths that barely disturb the surrounding straw bedding. Every inhalation is measured and calm, minimizing the moisture and heat lost to the subterranean air. By entering a state of regulated torpor, the ferret bypasses the need to forage in the freezing gale above. It simply rests, suspended in a state of suspended animation where time loses its sharp edges. The fierce elements rage across the open landscape, entirely detached from the quiet, warm pocket of life tucked safely beneath the snow. Deep within the earthen alcove, time dissolves into a continuous, unbroken stillness. The frantic pace of the autumn hunts is entirely forgotten, replaced by the deep, restorative cadence of prolonged winter slumber. The ferret rests as a tightly woven sphere, its nose tucked neatly against the base of its tail to capture every fraction of exhaled warmth. This classic postural adaptation minimizes surface area, shielding the most vulnerable regions of the body from the cold. Around the sleeping animal, the subterranean atmosphere settles into a profound tranquility. The only sound is the gentle, rhythmic rise and fall of its slender ribcage, a steady tempo that mirrors the slow passage of the pre-dawn hours. Each breath is soft and measured, drawing in the dry, insulated air of the nest chamber and releasing a faint, invisible plume of warmth into the dark. Beneath the dense, insulating underfur, the ferret's body temperature stabilizes just above the chill of the frozen earth, maintaining an exquisite balance between active life and deep physiological rest. The straw bedding beneath shifts by microscopic margins as the sleeper settles even deeper into its dreamless state, completely insulated from the biting frost above. There is a supreme grace in this absolute quiet. The storm continues to sweep across the open plains in the darkness, but inside this secluded haven, the world has narrowed to the steady beat of a single, resilient heart. Surrounded by the heavy, comforting blanket of winter, the ferret drifts further into peaceful repose, secure in the timeless rhythm of the frozen earth. High above the subterranean retreat, a subtle transformation begins to touch the blanket of fresh white powder. The absolute blackness of the pre-dawn hours softens imperceptibly, yielding to a vast, pearlescent gray. A faint, indirect glimmer of dawn filters downward through the frozen crust of the earth, carrying the pale, low-angled light of the upcoming winter morning into the upper reaches of the abandoned burrow. Though no direct rays penetrate the deep earthen alcove, the ambient temperature of the surrounding soil responds to the changing sky. The ferret perceives this shift not through sight, but through the delicate, ancient tuning of its nervous system. Without waking, the sleeping animal adjusts its posture by a fraction of an inch, tightening its curled form even further as the nocturnal chill reaches its absolute nadir before the sun crests the horizon. Circadian rhythms, governed by the faint filtering of ultraviolet light through packed ice and snow, gently signal the body's internal clock. The metabolic suppression that guarded the ferret through the gale-swept night begins a slow, deliberate calibration, preparing the slender mustelid for the waking world while preserving the profound tranquility of the nest. The muffled wind above begins to lose its desperate edge, subsiding into a gentle, rolling hush across the drifts. The falling snow slows, tapering off into a few lazy, drifting crystals that settle silently upon the undisturbed landscape. Down below, the soft, rhythmic breathing continues unhurriedly, keeping time with the emerging day. The straw bedding remains still once more, cradling the small, warm body in a cocoon of absolute peace. In this quiet borderland between night and day, the ferret rests undisturbed, wrapped in the timeless, restorative stillness of the frozen earth, waiting for the first true light of winter to touch the world above. Far above the subterranean world, a pale winter dawn breaks across the frozen landscape. Low-angled sunlight spills across the pristine snow, casting long, indigo shadows that stretch peacefully over the hard-packed earth. The air is still and intensely cold, holding the profound, muffled silence that only deep winter can command. Deep within the insulated chamber of the earthen den, far removed from the biting chill, the seasoned ferret stirs gently. Its heart rate, which slowed significantly during the resting hours to conserve precious thermal energy, begins a gradual, measured acceleration. This internal physiological shift prepares the body for the waking world without demanding an abrupt expenditure of calories. Wrapped tightly in a dense, insulating underfur beneath longer guard hairs, the mustelid remains remarkably warm. Nature has gifted this seasoned survivor with an exceptional seasonal coat, trapping a vital layer of insulating air close to the skin. With slow, deliberate movements, the ferret stretches, its muscles relaxing and tightening as circulation returns fully to its extremities. Every biological system is fine-tuned for survival in this freezing realm, operating with extraordinary metabolic efficiency. The ambient sounds of the wider world remain distant, a faint, hollow whisper of wind brushing over the crusted snowdrifts far above. Here, in the quiet sanctuary of the underground nest, Time moves slowly, aligned with the gentle rhythm of the winter season and the soothing stillness of the earth. Leaving the cozy warmth of the nest behind, the ferret begins its slow progression through the narrow earthen tunnel. The passage slopes gently upward, the soil growing progressively cooler against its sensitive paw pads as it nears the surface world. Every movement is measured and deliberate, a masterclass in energy conservation. At the terminus of the burrow, where the dark soil meets the blinding white of the exterior, the seasoned mustelid halts. It rests its chin lightly upon the packed earth, perfectly framed by the mouth of the den. Here, at the threshold, it pauses to assess the frozen expanse. The olfactory receptors within its damp nose immediately go to work, sampling the frigid air for any shifting scent trails, the subtle aroma of hidden caches, or the distant tang of potential hazards. Nothing moves in the pale morning light. Outside, a blanket of pristine snow covers the landscape, absorbing sound and creating a profound, muffled silence. The distant winter wind hums softly far overhead, but right at the entrance, the air is still and intensely cold. The ferret's whiskers twitch as they register the barometric pressure and the biting temperature drop. It is a quiet boundary between the safety of the subterranean sanctuary and the stark, demanding reality of the frozen wilderness. For a long, tranquil moment, the animal simply breathes in the crisp, sterile atmosphere, letting its senses adjust entirely to the stillness of the winter dawn. Stepping out onto the crust of the snow, the ferret adopts a low, sliding gait. Its elongated, flexible body stays remarkably close to the white surface, minimizing exposure to the biting wind while conserving precious metabolic energy. Every stride is precise and intentional, tailored to prevent unnecessary heat loss during this fleeting window of activity. With its heart rate carefully managed and thick winter guard hairs trapping a vital layer of insulating air against its skin, the mustelid moves with quiet efficiency across the frozen expanse. Its dark eyes scan the undulating terrain, but winter foraging relies heavily on senses far sharper than sight. Pausing frequently, the ferret lowers its snout to the snow, investigating potential subnivean entry points. These microscopic gaps in the crust, formed where grass stems and roots decay beneath the freeze, serve as hidden highways for small mammals. The ferret's sensitive whiskers detect subtle thermal vents and faint seismic vibrations rising from the world beneath the ice. It pauses above a promising drift, its muscles coiling slightly beneath its fur. Beneath the heavy white blanket, a tiny vole shifts its weight. The acoustic resonance travels upward through the dense snowpack, captured instantly by the ferret's acute auditory system. With a single, calculated thrust of its forepaws, the seasoned hunter breaks through the brittle crust, plunging into the powdery layers below to test the hidden depths. Though the first attempt yields only frosted moss and cold earth, the animal remains utterly unhurried, its focused search proceeding with a calm, rhythmic persistence that defines survival in the deep cold. Slipping effortlessly beneath the surface drift, the ferret vanishes into the hidden world tucked away beneath the ice. Its long, slender form is uniquely engineered for this subterranean realm, allowing the mustelid to flow through narrow root channels and compact snow tunnels with fluid ease. In this silent, insulated layer between earth and frost, the ambient temperature rises just a fraction, offering a brief respite from the biting wind above. Moving through the dark maze, the hunt requires almost no motion, relying instead on absolute stealth and sudden, precise strikes. The ferret's acute senses map the invisible terrain. Its wet rhinarium and sensitive vibrissae sweep the frozen walls, reading chemical trails left behind by voles and mice. Every breath is slow and measured, keeping its metabolic rate steady as it navigates the twisting passages. Minutes pass in absolute quiet, punctuated only by the faint, muffled settling of snow far overhead. Detecting a minute vibration in the frozen soil just ahead, the ferret pauses. its muscles melting into complete stillness. It waits with infinite patience, perfectly attuned to the subtle rhythms of the dark earth. Satisfied by the stillness of the hidden passage, it eases back into a gentle, rolling crawl, continuing its quiet exploration of the deep frost-bound world before the long rest begins. With the brief reconnaissance concluded, the seasoned mustelid turns its slender head back toward the familiar mouth of the deeper home tunnels. Leaving the frigid, subnivean layer behind, it ascends a gentle, upward-sloping earthen conduit that leads deep beneath the frost line. The ambient sounds of the winter world, the distant, whistling wind and the crisp cracking of surface ice, fade away into absolute, muffled silence. As it moves inward, the narrowness of the tunnel serves a vital physiological purpose, restricting airflow and allowing the ferret's own body heat to gently warm the surrounding earth. This architectural design is a masterclass in energy conservation, shielding the animal from the unforgiving thermal drain of the surface dawn. Every muscular contraction is fluid and economical, deliberately paced to prevent any unnecessary expenditure of precious calories. Passing through the final bend of the underground maze, the temperature rises a few crucial degrees, creating a microclimate of stillness and safety. The pale, low-angled beams of sunlight cannot reach this far down, leaving the inner sanctuary wrapped in soothing, restorative darkness. Here, far from the biting winter air, the journey draws to its quiet close, leaving only the steady, calming rhythm of a slow pulse returning to its resting baseline. Within the sheltered heart of the underground chamber, the ferret settles into the soft embrace of its nested sanctuary, constructed from dried grasses and shed winter fur. To survive the bitter demands of the season, the seasoned mustelid curls tightly inward, tucking its delicate nose beneath its base and wrapping its long tail snugly around its body. This compact, spherical posture minimizes surface area, drastically reducing radiant heat loss and preserving the core body temperature necessary for survival. As stillness takes hold, a remarkable physiological transformation begins. The ferret's metabolic rate shifts downward into a state of deep conservation, allowing its heart rate and respiration to ease into a slow, measured cadence. This shallow torpor acts as a biological shield, dampening energy expenditure during the harshest hours of the winter day when foraging would cost more calories than it could possibly yield. Every breath becomes gentle and deep, matching the profound quietude of the frostbound earth resting just above. In this dark, insulated haven, time loses its urgency. The rhythmic rise and fall of the small ribs grow softer, blending seamlessly with the muffled silence of the subterranean world. Surrendering completely to the biological imperative of rest, the ferret drifts into unbroken, restorative sleep. Here, shielded from the biting winds and the pale, icy light of dawn, the body restores its reserves, dreaming away the freezing hours until the cycle of the winter world turns once more. Deep beneath the frost-bound crust of the earth, far beyond the reach of biting surface winds, a seasoned ferret rests within a sanctuary woven from the remnants of autumn. Here, in the quiet heart of the subterranean den, the ambient sounds of the outside world are reduced to a distant, muffled sigh. Heavy snowfall blankets the fields above, pressing a thick layer of silence against the frozen soil, punctuated only by the faint, far-off crack of surface ice shifting under the weight of the deepening chill. The architecture of this hidden retreat is a masterclass in thermal engineering. Every square inch of the spherical chamber is lined with a dense matrix of dried meadow grasses, fallen oak leaves, and tightly packed moss. This meticulous layering creates a virtually impenetrable barrier against the surrounding permafrost. Interwoven with this botanical padding is the ferret's own shed underfur, plucked painstakingly during the late autumn molt to form a resilient, downy quilt that traps microscopic pockets of warm air. Within this cocoon of fibrous insulation, The seasoned mustelid curls into a remarkably compact sphere. By pressing its nose gently against its tail and tucking its paws close to its chest, the animal minimizes its exposed surface area, drastically reducing radiant heat loss. The surrounding earth acts as a natural thermal mass, stabilizing the microclimate of the den, while the nest itself prevents any direct contact with the cold-conducting ground. As late afternoon shadows lengthen across the frozen landscape above, total stillness settles over the subterranean refuge. The air inside the nest remains calm, thick with the comforting scent of dry earth and old grass. Wrapped in layers of specialized insulation, the ferret surrenders entirely to the quiet rhythm of the cold season, held safely within the dark, warm embrace of the deep earth. Within the dark confines of the nest, the seasoned ferret folds its flexible spine into an exceptionally tight, spherical posture. This classic mustelid tuck is an evolutionary triumph of thermoregulation, engineered to safeguard delicate extremities from the biting grip of winter. By bringing its rounded snout down to touch the base of its tail and pulling its nimble limbs inward against the soft fur of its abdomen, the animal reduces its exposed surface to volume ratio to the absolute minimum. Every vulnerable point is shielded. The sensitive nose and paw pads, areas prone to rapid thermal dissipation, are safely tucked away in the center of this living sphere, insulated by the surrounding cascade of thick winter guard hairs and dense underfur. This compact arrangement creates a micro-perimeter of trapped body heat, preventing the precious warmth generated by the core organs from leaking into the surrounding nest material. As the ferret settles deeper into this anatomical curl, its flexible skeletal structure allows the muscles to relax completely, unburdened by the need to shiver. The thick layer of subcutaneous fat accumulated during the abundant autumn months now acts as an additional thermal blanket, sealing the core against the faint, residual chill that manages to seep through the perimeter of the grass-lined chamber. In this posture of profound economy, the body expends virtually zero energy on maintaining posture, resting entirely upon the support of the quilted earth beneath. Here, motionless and perfectly balanced, the mustelid drifts further into the restorative stillness of the seasonal sleep, held safely within its own self-made shelter of fur and bone. Deep within this living sphere of fur and bone, a profound internal shift takes place. As the late afternoon light fades entirely from the frozen surface above, the ferret's physiology recalibrates to meet the austere demands of midwinter. The central nervous system initiates a gentle, calculated decline in metabolic output, a remarkable mammalian adaptation known as light torpor. The heart, usually a tireless engine beating at a brisk pace, slows its rhythm significantly. With every measured drop in pulse rate, the demand for oxygen plummets. The lungs adjust to this quieted state, taking in slow, shallow breaths that scarcely disturb the soft bedding of dried grasses. This deliberate downshifting of biological processes allows the mustelid to dramatically conserve its internal energy reserves. Without the need to forage across frozen landscapes, the stored calories of autumn are preserved with extraordinary efficiency. Cellular metabolism shifts to rely almost exclusively on the thick layer of subcutaneous adipose tissue, gently releasing stored lipids as steady, low-level heat. The body temperature adjusts downward by a fraction of a degree, finding a perfect equilibrium with the cool, stable microclimate of the subterranean den. This metabolic economy ensures that precious resources are stretched across the endless weeks of winter without depleting the animal's vitality. Drifting deeper into this restorative slumber, the ferret experiences a state of suspended urgency. The harsh realities of the frost-bound world dissolve into absolute stillness, sustained entirely by the quiet, miraculous efficiency of its own adapted biology. Protecting this slowed, heat-conserving physiology is an intricate biological garment, the winter pelt. During the autumn months, the ferret's coat undergoes a complete structural metamorphosis, replacing the sparse, coarse hairs of summer with a remarkably dense, double-layered defense system against the cold. Lying directly against the skin is the underfur, a fine, exceptionally thick layer of short, crimped fibers. These microscopic hairs act as a natural labyrinth, trapping countless tiny pockets of air warmed directly by the body. This trapped boundary layer serves as an elite thermal barrier, preventing precious internal heat from escaping into the chilled earth. Interwoven above the underfur is a protective canopy of long, glossy guard hairs. These specialized fibers possess a water-repellent outer cuticle, sealing the undergarment of fur against frost and moisture if any subterranean humidity happens to condense. The guard hairs also form a windproof shield, breaking the force of any microscopic drafts that might somehow infiltrate the nest's outer walls. Together, these two distinct layers create an impenetrable microclimate around the mustelid. As the ferret curls tighter into its resting sphere, the hairs compress softly, locking the thermal air pockets in place with absolute efficiency. Every square millimeter of skin is accounted for, cushioned by a velvety thickness that transforms the animal into a self-contained island of warmth. In this quiet subterranean dark, the perfected architecture of the winter coat works in absolute silence, harmonizing with the resting metabolism to preserve life through the frozen solstice. Far above this snug, subterranean sphere, the surface world is gripped by the deepening chill of late afternoon. Winter gales sweep relentlessly across the open agricultural fields, driving powdery drifts of snow against frozen stubble. Yet down here, buried deep beneath the frost line, those howling winds are reduced to nothing more than a distant, muffled sigh. The thick mantle of earth and packed snow acts as an acoustic sponge, absorbing the harsh frequencies of the surface storm and leaving behind a profound, velvet silence. Occasionally, a particularly forceful gust above causes the surface crust to settle, sending a faint, high-frequency sound of ice cracking through the soil strata. To the sleeping ferret, however, these subterranean vibrations are barely perceptible background notes, easily harmonized with the rhythm of the den. The ambient temperature within the nest chamber remains remarkably stable, buffered completely from the plunging thermometer overhead. The quiet external environment mirrors the internal stillness of the mustelid. As daylight fades into the long winter night, the world above freezes into motionless sculpture, while the ferret remains locked in its restorative slumber. The steady, slow cadence of its breathing, a soft inhalation and a gentle, measured release, rhythmically matches the profound calm of the buried landscape. There is no urgency in this darkness, only a timeless, evolutionary patience, protected by the dense earth, the marvel of its winter coat, and the lowered demands of a resting metabolism. The seasoned hunter rests undisturbed, perfectly attuned to the deep, abiding quietude of the frozen season. As the late afternoon dissolves completely into the velvet shadows of night, the cycle of the cold season continues its gentle, unhurried progression. Deep within the insulated sphere of the underground nest, the seasoned ferret remains enveloped in its endless, restorative slumber. Hours melt away in this sanctuary of stillness, where the frantic demands of the active months are suspended by the quiet genius of winter biology. In this state of prolonged rest, the ferret's physiology functions at peak conservation. Its metabolic rate remains dialed down to a fraction of its summer baseline, a marvelous adaptation that preserves every precious calorie stored within its autumn-nourished frame. The dense, multi-layered fur coat traps a microscopic shield of warm air against the skin, maintaining a steady core temperature without the need for active muscular shivering. Every intricate system within the mustelid's body works in silent harmony with the frozen world outside, proving that survival is not always a battle against the elements, but sometimes an art of profound surrender. The soft, rhythmic breathing continues, measuring out the slow passage of time in the dark. Subterranean silence wraps around the curled form like a heavy quilt, undisturbed by the howling gales far above. Here, beneath the frost line, time loses its urgency. The ferret rests in total peace, completely sustained by instinct, physiology, and the timeless embrace of the winter earth. Far beneath the frost-bound crust of the meadow lies a subterranean sanctuary untouched by the scouring gales of winter. Here, in the quiet dark of a familiar burrow lined with centuries of dry straw and softened fur, an elder ferret stirs from a long, restorative slumber. The den is an architectural masterpiece of territorial familiarity, its winding tunnels and rounded chambers mapped intimately into the mustelid's muscle memory over countless seasons. Every root, curve, and pocket of trapped air is known, offering a profound sense of security that eases the burden of advancing age. As the senior mammal shifts, a slow, gentle wave of physiological adjustment ripples through its body. In geriatric mustelids, the internal furnace banks its fires to conserve precious energy during the leanest months. A natural slowing of the metabolic rate allows vital organs to function efficiently on diminished caloric intake, while specialized thermoregulation mechanisms work quietly to preserve core body warmth against the ambient chill seeping down through the soil. Years of tireless hunting and darting through dense brush have left their gentle mark upon the joints. The cartilage, worn thin by a lifetime of agility, calls for a softer, more deliberate pace. There is no urgency now, only a graceful acceptance of time's passage. Surrounded by the muffled, distant thrum of the winter wind above and the low, comforting settling sounds of the earth, the elder breathes deeply. The soft rustle of dry nesting material accompanies the rhythm of resting lungs, honoring a quiet, well-earned tranquility within the safe embrace of the earth. Drifting upward along the familiar earthen corridor, the aging ferret approaches the surface where the tunnel narrows toward the twilight. The ambient temperature shifts, dropping noticeably as the heavy blanket of subterranean insulation gives way to the breath of the open winter. Outside, the sun dips below the horizon, spilling washes of bruised violet and burnt amber across the snow-draped meadow. With measured care, the mustelid pokes its snout into the crisp air. The cold draft meets a coat thickened by seasonal molt, triggering an automatic physiological response. In older mammals, specialized vascular shunts beneath the skin constrict to redirect warm blood inward, fiercely protecting the core against the encroaching chill. Guard hairs, frosted with condensation, catch the fading light like tiny crystals. There is no rush to plunge into the drifts. Joint preservation, long since written into the daily calculus of the senior ferret's life, dictates every motion. The pause, bearing the quiet stiffness of old cartilage and time-worn bone, step outward onto the crust of snow with careful deliberation. Each placement is exact, testing the firmness of the frozen surface without expending a single unnecessary calorie. A gentle head movement sweeps the low-slung horizon. Whiskers tremble, gathering faint scent particles carried on the settling air currents of dusk, verifying that the immediate territory remains tranquil and unchanged. The fading colors above mirror the quiet slowing of the day, matching the low, steady tempo of the elder's own heartbeat. Standing at the threshold of the den, surrounded by the muted silence of the freezing landscape, the ferret simply observes the peaceful close of another winter afternoon. The mechanics of the senior mustelid's gait tell a quiet story of adaptation and survival. Where younger ferrets bound with explosive elasticity across the terrain, this elder utilizes a measured, low-slung traverse. The shoulder blades move with a fluid, economical slide beneath skin and muscle, minimizing any vertical displacement that might strain aging joints. Because geriatric physiology brings a gradual thinning of synovial fluid within the cartilage capsules, every step is calculated to distribute weight evenly, sparing the hip and elbow joints from sharp impacts against the frozen crust. The metabolic rate, now expertly modulated for the coldest months, dictates that speed is secondary to preservation. To burn extra calories in pursuit of phantom prey, would draw too heavily upon the body's diminishing energy reserves. Instead, the ferret glides forward with a rhythmic, undulating momentum, belly held close to the snowpack to capture residual warmth rising from the earth below. The paws lift and set down with a feathery touch, leaving faint, neat impressions in the crystalline powder, a delicate signature of a life well-traveled. In this fading winter light, movement is art rather than urgency. The muscles contract and relax in a slow, harmonious sequence, prioritizing the steady maintenance of core body temperature over distance. Each stride is an exercise in biological efficiency, honoring the passage of time through absolute physical grace. Pausing near the rim of the snow-draped entrance, the elder mustelid lowers its slender muzzle toward the crystalline crust. This is a moment of quiet reconnaissance, relying on a sophisticated sensory apparatus honed by seasons of experience. Within the nasal cavity, millions of specialized olfactory receptors unfold, designed to process the complex chemical signatures carried by the faint winter breeze. As the pink nose twitches in a slow, gentle sweep from side to side, the ferret samples the chilled evening air with remarkable precision. Bold scents evoke an internal map of the familiar home range. Borne on the draft are the faint mineral tangs of frozen stone, the distant musky trace of a sleeping badger, and the familiar, comforting aroma of its own subterranean pathways etched into the surrounding soil. This territory is not merely an environment, it is a tapestry of memory, recorded in scent and anchored by years of occupancy. The relaxed tilt of the head allows the outer ears to catch the muffled, distant sounds of the landscape, the settling of a snow-laden branch, the heavy sigh of the freezing earth, and the soft whistle of wind brushing across the surface far above. There is no tension in these sensory checks, no frantic search for sudden danger. Instead, the collection of data is an act of quiet reassurance. The vomeronasal organ processes the heavy, cold air without demanding an immediate physical response, allowing the aging nervous system to interpret the world at a measured, tranquil pace. The familiar world is quiet, secure, and entirely known. With the sensory survey complete, the elder ferret shifts its weight, turning its flexible frame inward toward the shadowed mouth of the burrow. The transition from the biting surface frost to the sheltered embrace of the earth happens in slow, deliberate increments. As the mustelid descends the earthen tunnel, the ambient sounds of the winter night, the whistle of the wind and the crack of freezing branches, fade into a profound, velvety quietude. Deep within senior mammals, metabolic rates adjust to meet the demands of the cold season through precise thermoregulation. The ferret's core temperature settles, and as it moves deeper underground, the soil acts as a natural thermal blanket, buffering the chill of the external frost. Every step along the packed earth floor is executed with joint-preserving care, honoring limbs that have carried the animal across countless miles of summer brush and autumn fields. Reaching the innermost sleeping chamber, the aging ferret finds its nest of dry straw and softened fur. It curls its long, flexible body into a tight, restorative circle, maximizing body heat retention. This familiar refuge, untouched by harsh gales, offers a secure sanctuary where the heart rate eases and breathing slows to a gentle, rhythmic cadence. The earth settles around the sleeping mustelid with soft, low sounds, cradling it in a deep, peaceful slumber designed to conserve diminishing energy reserves through the long winter night. Within the quiet sanctuary of the subterranean chamber, the elder ferret completes its final adjustment, sinking deeper into the dry straw and softened fur of the nest. To preserve precious metabolic reserves during the coldest months, senior mustelids rely on a profound conservation of energy, allowing their systems to enter a state of deep, sustained rest akin to shallow torpor. The ferret's nose tucks neatly beneath its lower flanks, minimizing exposed surface area and optimizing the physiological marvel of mammalian thermoregulation. As the last traces of movement cease, the body forms a compact, perfect sphere designed for maximum heat retention. The low, settling sounds of the earth hum gently through the surrounding soil walls, vibrating softly against the chamber floor in a timeless, steady rhythm. With every slow, rhythmic inhalation, the chest rises and falls with effortless grace, matching the quiet stillness of the subterranean world. The gentle tempo of respiration slows further, echoing the profound peace of a winter night that has fully taken over the landscape above. Shielded by familiarity and the comforting embrace of the deep earth, the elder ferret drifts into an undisturbed, restorative sleep, wrapped in the quiet dignity of a life well traveled. Far above the frozen crust of the earth, the winter night claims the landscape with an iron grip. But deep beneath the frost line, in the absolute quiet of the subterranean realm, the air retains a stable, sheltered warmth. Through winding earthen corridors polished by years of passage, an elderly ferret navigates with slow, deliberate grace. Each step is measured, guided by a lifetime of muscle memory and the fading, familiar sense of home. At this advanced stage of senescence, the mustelid's metabolism naturally scales down, conserving precious caloric energy as core body temperature relies heavily on the insulating properties of the surrounding soil. The microclimate of the deep burrow remains untouched by the freezing gales howling on the surface. Reaching the innermost nursery chamber, the aging animal pauses. The chamber is lined with a thick mattress of dried meadow grasses, fallen leaves, and shed winter underfur collected over many seasons. Here, thermoregulation is aided entirely by this dense thermal cocoon and the physics of the earth itself, which buffers the bitter winter cold. With gentle, circling movements, the ferret adjusts the bedding, arranging the fibers to cradle its lightweight, aging frame. It settles downward, tucking its nose neatly beneath its tail in a tight, spherical posture designed to minimize surface area and retain every ounce of warmth. The frantic, high-octane energy that once drove endless miles of hunting tunnels has quietly faded, replaced by the profound necessity of rest. Outside, a distant, hollow frost crack echoes through the frozen bedrock, muffled entirely by yards of dense dirt. Inside the sanctuary, only the faint, slow breathing of the small mammal disturbs the stillness, blending softly with the gentle rustle of dry grass as the body surrenders completely to the peace of the deep earth. To curl into this sanctuary is to fold inward through the entire chronicle of a lifetime. The joints, once forged in the reckless fires of youth, now carry the quiet poetry of senescence, the accumulated miles of countless spring meadows, summer thickets, and autumn orchards. In the long life of a solitary mustelid, every season leaves an invisible map etched into bone and sinew. This small body remembers the blind, trembling vulnerability of the initial litter, huddled deep within the dark womb of the earth. It remembers the sudden, dizzying expansion of the world above, the rush of wind through tall timothy grass, the sharp, electric scent of rain on dry soil, and the fierce, instinctive drive to navigate labyrinthine tunnels in pursuit of sustenance. Those high metabolism days of endless motion, where calories burned like quicksilver and survival demanded absolute vigilance, belong to a different iteration of self. Over the long arc of aging, physiological systems have gracefully recalibrated. The rapid, pulsing heartbeat that once fueled split-second predatory responses has softened into a slow, measured cadence. The internal machinery, having efficiently performed its biological imperative across countless solar cycles, now rests its gears. Each blade of grass beneath the slender frame holds tactile memories of collection, harvested during fleeting amber afternoons when the air smelled of frost and ripening seeds. The fur, silver-tipped and dense with winter undercoat, has sheltered this life against snow, rain, and the fierce isolation of the wild. Now, held safely within the unchanging embrace of the subterranean microclimate, the physical journey reaches its natural equilibrium. The miles traveled, the hunts completed, and the survival earned through instinct and adaptation dissolve quietly into the profound, enduring stillness of the earth. Inside this insulated earthen chamber, far below the frost line, the frantic heartbeat of a high metabolism hunter softens into a gentle, rhythmic pulse. For a small mustelid, maintaining internal warmth usually demands a relentless intake of energy and an elevated basal metabolic rate. Yet tonight, the body's internal thermostat gently curtails its demands, allowing core temperature to harmonize with the stable, cool microclimate of the deep substrate. Respiration becomes remarkably deep, slow, and measured, mirroring the quiet cadence of the frozen earth that surrounds the underground sanctuary. With every subtle inhalation, the dry grass of the lining shifts almost imperceptibly, catching the faint, warm moisture of each exhaled breath. The lungs, which once drank in the sharp ozone of fierce mountain gales and open prairie winds, now expand and contract in an effortless, minimalist rhythm. In these moments of profound senescence, the nervous system gracefully orchestrates a natural energy conservation. Vasomotor responses adjust, directing a warm, steady current toward vital centers while the outer extremities rest in comfortable stillness. The rapid firing of synapses that once translated every rustle of leaf litter into explosive muscular action now drifts into a peaceful amber lull. Chemical messengers signal the endocrine system to lower cortisol and step back from vigilance, easing the transition into deep torpor. There is no struggle here against the fading light, only the quiet wisdom of biology completing its final arc. The relentless drive of survival yields to the profound relief of rest, blending individual breath seamlessly into the ancient, unchanging rhythm of the sleeping world. Far above the quiet sanctuary of the burrow, the winter night exerts its full, frigid dominion across the open landscape. Bitter gales sweep across the snow-crusted fields, driving fine powder into every crevice and freezing the surface soil solid. Yet, meters below the frost line, a profound atmospheric stillness prevails. The earth itself acts as a massive thermal blanket, stabilizing the subterranean microclimate within a narrow, protective range that remains untouched by the surface tempests. This deep subterranean insulation relies on the low thermal conductivity of compacted soil, clay, and trapped air pockets within the sediment. As the frost bites deeply into the upper strata, the ambient temperature inside the nursery chamber holds steady, buffering the aging body against the meteorological violence raging overhead. The heavy, muffled thrum of the surface wind penetrates the earth only as the faintest, low-frequency vibration, a distant murmur felt more as a pressure change than a sound. Enclosed by layers of woven meadow grasses, shed underfur, and ancient root systems, the nesting chamber maintains its own delicate ecosystem. The insulating dried plant fibers trap tiny pockets of warm air, creating a microhabitat where thermal regulation requires minimal metabolic effort from the resting mustelid. Shielded from the elements, the ferret lies completely cocooned in this dense matrix of earth and organic material. The harsh reality of winter cannot reach this depth. There is only the enveloping warmth of the nest, the absolute silence of the deep ground, and the gentle, secure embrace of the subterranean dark. Within the protective cradle of the nest, a profound physiological shift takes place as the nervous system releases its final commands. The last vestiges of muscular tension melt away from the slender, elongated frame, allowing the joints and limbs to settle into a posture of absolute ease. In aging mammals, senescence brings a natural decline in neurotransmitter output, gently dimming the pathways that once fueled relentless nocturnal hunts and energetic bouts of exploration. This gradual downregulation of neuromuscular activity permits the skeletal muscles to achieve a state of complete, unyielding flaccidity. As the body relaxes, the boundaries between active REM sleep and waking consciousness softly blur, dissolving into a seamless expanse of stillness. The brain's electrical rhythms slow from alert waking frequencies into broad, languid delta waves, signaling the onset of restorative peace. With metabolic demands already dialed back to conserve vital energy, the cardiovascular system follows suit. The heart rate descends into a slow, measured cadence, pumping warm blood through the core while safely withdrawing it from the extremities. Thermoregulation, once managed by active shivering and muscle movement, is now sustained entirely by the passive insulating properties of the surrounding grasses and the deep earth's steady warmth. Respiration becomes exceptionally shallow and evenly spaced. Each micro-breath draws in the gentle, familiar scent of dry hay, damp earth, and the comfortable musk of a long-lived existence. There is no struggle against the fading light, only the quiet surrender of biological systems completing their final, harmonious cycle. The nervous system dims its remaining sensory inputs, turning away from the muffled vibrations of the frozen world above. Wrapped in layers of soft underfur and organic quiet, the aging mustelid drifts deeper into an undisturbed, everlasting rest, cradled safely within the silent heart of the winter earth. The final exhalation dissolves softly into the quiet chamber, a delicate wisp of warmth fading against the dry nesting grass. In this ultimate moment of biological completion, the ferret's metabolic flame simply quietens, the cellular machinery resting after years of relentless motion. Without strain or sudden shock, the remaining cellular energy reserve is quietly spent, marking the end of a singular, well-lived life within the earth. The slender hunter's journey closes naturally, dissolving back into the timeless, enduring rhythm of the natural world. Far above the subterranean sanctuary, the frozen winter stars turn slowly through the dark night sky, indifferent and eternal. The wind continues its muffled song against the surface of the soil, but down here in the deep dark, absolute peace prevails. The physical form remains, perfectly cradled by the insulating warmth of the nest it labored long ago to line. As the hours pass, the earth reclaims its own, integrating every fiber of the mustelid back into the vast, unfolding cycle of the seasons. There is no emptiness here, only fulfillment. The den settles into a deeper, heavier silence, holding the memory of the life that shaped it. In the stillness of the subterranean winter, all is finished, all is balanced, and the long sleep is complete.